Welcome back to WRPL, the podcast where we talk about all the things we are watching, reading, playing, and listening to. My name's Ben.
And I'm Steve.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well, Ben. How are you?
Good. We are in another kind of entertainment drought. It's like every other week.
Well, I don't want to say an entertainment
Not
drought.
a drought. No, we're not in a drought. It's just
in terms of big releases.
Yeah, we get torrential rain, and then it's like really hot, and then it's just muggy, and you can't do anything in the day, so you just stay inside and watch stuff, which is aw shucks.
We should move away from the swamp.
I know, but I love hearing those frogs every night.
Yep. I mean, it's the best white noise there is.
It is. It really is. Like that in whale sounds, I think.
Right. You know, if you could, you know, they're both water-based animals. Like, why don't whales and frogs team up more often?
Saltwater, freshwater, I think, is probably the main thing.
Now, what would terrify you more? A frog the size of a whale or a whale?
The size of a frog? Well, whale size of a frog is a fish, pretty much. So I'd have to say whale-sized frog, yeah.
Yeah, because then again, I guess, like, that frog could go to land, and just imagine a whale just like trudging through the city. And
I know there are killer frog movies out there, but they're not as scary as a killer lizard,
you'd be like,
killer
oh,
snake.
Cute, and then it would just shoot its tongue out.
Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, if giant frogs were a problem and they were like and they were just like kind of eating people, I imagine like as long as you have some sort of like knife or sword,
pokey thing,
yeah, it's like, okay, you can eat me, but I'll be fine because I'll probably just like stab my way out and I'll be okay.
Well, like when we were talking about an episode or two ago about little dogs having to wear like spiked vests because eagles were swooping down and grabbing them, we would just evolve into having suits that had spikes or had
it'd just be Mad Max armor.
It would have like a hot sauce on it, so the frog wouldn't like the taste. You know, we'd figure out what don't frogs like.
Our eyes would be burning constantly, but it'd be worth it because we're not getting eaten by frogs.
But we would just incorporate goggles into our everyday world.
The only thing I think we would have to worry about is, you know, poisonous frogs that size. Like, okay, yeah, they can eat me and I can probably stab my way out, but I'm probably still going to die from the poison that's just seeping through every part of their body.
Yeah. How did we get here?
Anyway, what have we been watching, reading, playing, and listening to?
So, spoilers for everything, as always. Our main topic is Love, Death, and Robots. It's been out for a few weeks, but we were talking about drought. And there's just not anything in theaters that is important enough to talk about. So we're just doing all the catching up on all the consumables that we've had. So we have Love, Death, and Robots is our main topic. We'll also be talking about Under the Banner of Heaven, We Built This City, and Sifu.
We own the city, not we built the city.
We own the city?
We own the city, yeah.
Oh, I guess I was thinking of the song.
We built this city. And that's all I'm going to say because we don't have the rights.
Yeah. We own the city, Sifu, and then a couple of things that we've only just started and just have initial thoughts on. Let's start with the stuff. You know, let's get rid of the quick and easy stuff.
Sure.
So, I'm a big fan of Kids in the Hall. How much Kids in the Hall have you watched?
I'm sure I've seen sketches and probably ones that you've shown me. But it's been so long I don't remember them.
Okay. Well, the Kids in the Hall have been around since the late 80s or early 90s. Canadian-based comedy troupe of five guys. Always funny. I mean, their big thing back in the day was just like businessmen. That was the ultimate evil. If you were a big corporate douche, that was the worst thing you could possibly be.
That was the worst thing back then?
Back then.
Wow, times have changed.
But it was more of like the sellout culture and like, oh, you used to be a cool guy, but now you're just some corporate stooge. And it was more of how you were perceived to the rest of the world. Anywho, I love the Kids in the Hall. They're fantastic comedians. I love when they dress up as women. I know it's kind of a trope that has gone away, but that was a big thing in their sketches where they always played all the characters. They'd have a few once in a while, but they always played all the women characters, and they were all just so good at playing these women, and they're always very specific. And even if you didn't know someone like that, you can see the characteristics and maybe people you do know. But they have a new season. They're in their 50s and 60s now. They're ancient, and they look at, and they even talk about it. Like the first sketch is, oh, Kids in the Hall Brain Candy, their movie, finally made its money back after all these years. And so it must be popular enough to do a revival.
Sure.
So they just take a bulldozer and like dig up the grave of the kids in the hall, and they're all laying there looking at each other like, oh my God, who are you people? I'm like, oh, it's me, it's Bruce. I'm like, oh my God, you're so old. And Dave Foley just going like, am I still the cute one? So I've only watched about the first 3 episodes of this new season, and it's all been really weird, really funny. The production value is really high. A lot of their shows were kind of shot on the street, but they also had set things like SNL. But these all look really, really nice. Nothing was shot in front of an audience at all. And I was very surprised in one of the very first sketches, Kevin McDonald and Dave Foley like rob a bank, and they get stopped in an alleyway by cops. And they're like, wait a minute, the cops are looking for 2 guys fully clothed. If we take off all our clothes, they won't notice us. And so the 2 cops that show up are reoccurring characters. And they were just like, hey, did they say anything about the robbers being completely naked? I'm like, no, they were definitely fully clothed. So they make them come out of the car fully naked. And they're fully naked. You see Dave Foley and Kevin McDonald's penis in the first episode. It's such a strange thing. There's these old men who have never done anything like this before, and I do not understand why they felt the need to do this. Not that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe, I'm looking at genitals, but it just seems so weird after all these years. Why the need?
Well, I mean, I imagine one thing, it's a good clickbait title, it's just like, can you believe Kids in the Hall finally pulled this one out?
I haven't seen anything. I never heard any rumblings of that.
Yeah, and it's the age where you can get away with a lot more than they did in the 80s and 90s, and plus they're like old men. It's like no one cares about our penises at this point. It's like we've lived the whole life. There's no shame anymore. It's just like, fuck it, let's just show our penises.
Yeah, these 60-year-old men are getting naked on TV, and you're going to have to look, and they make them like turn around and jump up and down and stuff. It goes on for a while. It's not a quick shot of their dicks. And I can understand if it's like, man, nobody ever believed I was like hung like a horse. I got to show this to the world before I'm dead. But, that's not really the case either. But Kids in the Hall, Season 1, well, they're just calling it Kids in the Hall Season 1, even though they have 5-6 seasons of their original show, and they've come back a few times with like little movies, like Death Comes to the Neighborhood. It's been so long since I've seen so much of it, but it's a welcome return. I love all these guys. It's a shame they didn't all get to mega stardom because they're all excellent comedians. If you like sketch comedy and male penises, watch Kids in the Hall. It's on Amazon.
So I think I know the answer, but can you rate for me? Were you a fan of Whitest Kids You Know?
I never watched full episodes. It was just clips on the internet.
Oh, okay. Well, then I think I know the order, but Whitest Kids You Know, Kids in the Hall, Mr. Show. The top 3. Rank them.
That's not difficult. Mr. Show is
number 1.
Is the best.
Okay.
Kids in the Hall would be my second favorite overall. I mean, Whitest Kid You Know, that's lower down. They have some great stuff, but I'm not dedicated to it at all. But like In Living Color, I loved. Not a huge fan of SNL, but actually my roommate was watching an episode, and there were some pretty funny episodes. It's just
of SNL.
Oh
yeah.
But I just can't sit and watch it.
I mean, SNL is a show I still pretty much watch almost every episode, and there's a lot of sketches where just like, wow, how did that make it through dress rehearsal? But I feel like it's even the bad is still like, I'm glad SNL's around. I hope it doesn't go away. I think the fact that it's been on this long and has been consistently good, and there's always that argument of just like Saturday Night Live dead or whatever, that kind of thing, and it's like, oh, my generation's comedians were way better than this. It's like it's all stupid. Like it's been good for 40 years, and I think the good outweighs the bad. They just lost some of their
Aidan
best
Bryant, people. Pete Davidson, Kyle Mooney, and
no one cares about Kyle though.
I love Kyle Mooney. He's great.
He when he hits, but most of the time he does not hit. His best work is when he plays some like goofball in someone else's sketch, but when it's like a Kyle Mooney sketch, it's usually not fun, at least for me.
Okay.
But you're more in tune with absurdist humor than I am.
Yeah.
So
They lost someone else. Did I miss someone? There was 4 of them, right?
it was Kate McKinnon, A.D. Bryant, Pete Davidson, and Kyle Mooney. Yeah. I think it was just those 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is sad. They're all very strong.
And I've heard, and I guess Melissa Villaseñor has said a lot of stuff against the show in the past few months.
The one like with the weird haircut, the mullety.
No, that's Sarah Sherman. Okay. I actually like Sarah Sherman. I think she's pretty fun. Good. Melissa Villaseñor is the one who does like all the impressions.
Is she the one that? Is she like really little and skinny? Did the like? She's in bed with Donald Glover and the dirty talk. That okay.
Yeah. I guess she's been having some problems with the show or something like that, and I think Michael Che was talking about leaving too or something. But he's kind of like, you can't have Weekend Update without him and Colin Jost.
Yeah.
It's like you can't either have like Colin Jost by himself wouldn't be great.
No,
and then teaming up with somebody else would feel like, well, we want Michael Che back because
if you just do the same jokes, like the writing jokes for each other, it's like, well, that was their thing, and you're trying to make it his thing,
and it works because it's just like Michael Che's trying to get him to say the most racist things possible, and which is always fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kids in the Hall.
Kids in the Hall, good stuff.
All right.
Yeah, I was saying, let's keep these snappy. We're at 11 minutes already. So what have you been consuming?
So I've been consuming HBO's We Own This City, a great companion piece to The Wire, if you're a fan of The Wire, which I consider the greatest show of all time.
It's all right.
I love The Wire. I can talk about The Wire all day.
And that's what we're doing.
I don't think any show has come close. I think there's other shows that are more entertaining, and I can understand why people don't like The Wire because it is kind of a slow burn, but it is... We're not talking about The Wire, but if you like The Wire, We Own the City is a perfect companion piece because it's also set in Baltimore.
Made by the same people.
Made by a lot of the same people. There's a lot of characters from The Wire or a lot of the actors from The Wire show up.
Not
None
characters.
of it, because all the characters in The Wire are made up.
Okay.
All the people in We Own the City are real people. They did exist. This is a true story about a corrupt police task force and essentially about a corrupt police department. Yeah, so it's 6 episodes, and it tells the story of the Baltimore Gun Trace Task Force. So these guys are going after guns in Baltimore, try and pull guns and drugs off the street. But basically it's these 6 to 10 guys, and over the course of over a decade that you follow John Barenthal's character, Wayne Jenkins.
It's 10 years for this whole season?
So it's more like, here's some flashbacks, but it's really kind of like this
thing happened over 10 years, we're at the end of it, and we're flashing back to the...
Yeah, so we're just seeing like kind of the pieces of his slow progression from starting on the force and getting trained by someone who shouldn't be training new police officers and going like, well, this is why you can do these crappy things, because 1, we can, and 2, it's like, well, they're criminals, so who gives a shit about them, kind of the stuff. And it's just seeing him going like, not so much he started out as like, I'm going to change the system, and I'm a great guy. It's just like, when you're new, you don't know how it works. And he's like, the first thing his training officer says to him is like, everything you learn in the academy, throw it out. This is Baltimore. And
it's such a cheesy line.
It sounds cheesy, but anyway, so you just kind of see him go like slowly just allow himself to do more and more and willing to get away with more and more. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take $10 off of this guy. Well, now I'm going to take $1,000 off of this, and now I'm taking all the money at these busts. And he's like, oh, I'm going to split it with my team. But if he's in a room with another guy, he's like, close the door. And so him and this other guy take all the money and like, oh, we didn't find anything. They're all just stealing from each other, essentially.
Are they getting people killed, or is it more money? Because fuck cops. But I can kind of get why, oh, look, I could pinch a little bit off this. No one will be the wiser. But when you're setting criminals up to take a fall that they didn't do, or someone gets killed, that's when...
So they're never like shooting people in the back of the head and going like, oh, they died in a gunfight. They're not doing any of that, because I think that stuff that's getting in homicide involved. Like, that's more paperwork and more stuff they have to cover up, where it's like, no one's going to... If you steal money from people, and they go, and especially like drug money and that kind of stuff. They can't go to the police department and go like, hey, give me my drug money back, because they have no way to prove that. But it's money they're supposed to be turning in as evidence. So that's the issue. But there is an episode where, because all these guys get arrested. It's not a spoiler because you find all this out in the first episode. Okay. So all these guys get arrested, and one guy's just like, I've never hurt anybody. But there's an episode where it shows the guy they took money from. That money was for his supplier, and so his supplier, he's like, you didn't give me the money, so he was killed because, and that guy was like, had a wife and 2 kids and all that kind of stuff, and he was just, I think, just selling weed or something like that. It wasn't like, anyway. So there was long-term effects of these guys who just thought like, oh well, I'm not hurting anybody, but people did get hurt because of them. Or they would get in a chase and a car would crash, and they would get, because they had a tip that this guy had a gun, they couldn't find a gun, and so they're just like, they call someone to come bring a gun and plan on this person who did nothing wrong. Damn. Just so they're just like, because this will look bad if I chase the guy and there's nothing here, and they're going to complain, but it's like, if there is a gun here, then I'm good. Yeah. So it was other police officers who weren't even necessarily in that group helping them pull off these crimes. So it's real interesting to see. It's just like, and you're watching it and going like, I can't believe this stuff happens regularly. And it's like, oh, this is a show? It's not, but like, this is a true story. Like all this stuff happened. This was thoroughly researched, and all this is in like the Baltimore papers. You can look up these guys and find out the whole story. Yeah, it's astounding, and it's a real look into how police departments are trained. And I mean, obviously, different cities might have different scenarios, and you get little glimpses of like the mayor like cutting funding for police officers, and like them having, it's like, well, we can't do anything because the mayor is not giving us the funding. But then you find out the mayor later on has been kicked out of office because she was involved in some fraud scheme. So like from top to bottom, the entire city, like they're all corrupt.
So you're saying we need to just get rid of Baltimore because it just keeps popping up like it's a bad place.
Yeah, it doesn't do the show any favors. So where like The Wire, you kind of got to see the entire city and the school systems, and the political system, the newspaper. You kind of see how an entire city works, where this is just like, we're just focusing on the police department, and you're getting just like little pieces of the outside. But yeah, it's all tied in together, and it's all awful, and there's nothing anyone can do about anything, essentially. And it doesn't do Baltimore favors. And it all takes, a big part of the story is all the Freddie Gray stuff. And you get a little glimpse of the riot. Like, Freddie Gray changed a lot in Baltimore and how they policed, and because a lot of the police didn't want to go out and do stuff, so crime went up like crazy after Freddie Gray, because nobody was willing to like lose their job by doing their job. So it's real interesting. It's frustrating to watch, and sounds you're gonna like go like, goddamn, fuck these people, like they deserve to go to jail. But then you just think like, oh, well, this is just one group that got caught. Across America, how deep does it go?
Every single department in every single city.
And it's like, who are you going to call when they're supposed to be the people you call,
Well, it sounds really fun.
It's great. It's great, though. John Barenthal is great. He does a fun accent. I think he's going to get an Emmy nomination. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a fan of The Wire.
Cool. Well, I saw a new movie. I guess it wasn't a complete drought this weekend. There was a new release, a David Cronenberg movie called Crimes of the Future.
I saw a trailer for this. I don't know what I watched.
Yeah.
It looked weird.
And that's his thing. He's big on body horror. I think that's what people know the name Cronenberg most for, is just body horror. You have The Fly and Scanners and Naked Lunch. And my favorite Cronenberg movie is Existence. It's not nearly as disgusting, but it unfortunately came out the same year that The Matrix did, and it was all about like plugging into a video game system and not knowing what's real, what's the game. And Existence is excellent. Did I ever make you watch it? Put it on the list of make me watch. My God, we're gonna need to have just like a week where it's like 4 of your movies, 4 of my movies, and we just knock them out.
Okay.
A day. 4 of yours a day, 4 of mine a day. We're 8 movies a day. Yeah.
Jesus.
16 hours minimum of movie watching. The rest is sleeping, eating, and then back to movies. Your wife would love that.
Yeah, my wife will be so excited.
So, Crimes of the Future. I kind of took a risk. You never know with David Cronenberg. I saw Naked Lunch a long time ago. Did not like it. I love his look of things, and I love the look of this movie. Well, let me just quick synopsis. Future, I think we have. It's hard to tell. Everything looks like a bombed out city. It's bizarre. It's one of those movies where it's not very populated, so all the streets are always empty. So it's like, okay, is this a post-apocalyptic world, or is it just a Sunday and everybody's at home? You can't quite tell. But in the future, we have evolved to adapt to the world, and pain doesn't exist anymore. And people have started to grow organs. It's like the next step of evolution. We're growing these organs fast, and some people look at it as, no, this is just our next stage and we got to embrace it. And some people are like, no, you got to get rid of this because it's like a cancer. You don't keep your tumors in you. We don't know what these organs are going to do, and your body is trying to kill you the whole time. So how can we trust it? So Viggo Mortensen he does performance art.
Okay.
He does feel the pain, and he does grow organs. And so his partner like tattoos his organs. Like they cut him open, he tattoos these new grown organs and then pulls it out for an audience. And since everybody can just like cut themselves and not feel pain, watching this sort of thing is this new exciting thing. And entertainment is like what's all on the inside. And then you have a story of this group of people who they got surgery to get new organs so they can start eating plastics and things like that, because like this is the world we built and now we need to adapt to that. We need to be able to eat the garbage and things like that.
That's not a future I'm excited for.
No. It's not bad. It's fine. But it really felt like we were watching the second act of a 3-act play. You're dropped in without a lot of knowledge of this world, and you have to gather a lot of the information through context clues. And then by the time it gets to the end, it's like you expect there to be a little bit more and wrap these character stories up, and it just ends. So it's a little piece of this world, a piece of this story without a great beginning and a great ending. And it's not that I needed to see more, but it just feels like there should be more.
Right.
There is gross body horror stuff of people cutting themselves open. There's a dude who his performance thing is he has ears sewn all over him and his eyes and nose are sewn shut, and he does a little dance.
Of course he does.
It's weird, but it's not so hard to follow that you don't know what's going on, but you don't really get the context for a lot of it, so you feel like you're missing something. And then it just ends, and it's like, that's it. Well, what happened to Kristen Stewart's character? It seemed like she had a bigger part, and she's really good in it. She plays this really manic person. Her speech, you know how she kind of has an odd way of speaking sometimes, but it's like super heightened, and it really works. Everyone's good in it. I can't complain about the performances or the makeup, and he sleeps in this bed thing that constantly is moving to adjust for his pain receptors. It's like, oh, he's choking on his air, so the bed's got to rotate so he can breathe easier, and it's constantly moving. And when he's sitting in a chair, it's like the chair looks like it was a skinned animal. It's all bones and flesh, and it's moving around. Everything is very like an H.R. Geiger thing come to life. Everything's pretty gross and grimy looking, but I gave it a C+ because visually I really liked it, and it's an interesting concept. The story just doesn't go anywhere, and it leaves you with nothing.
Yeah, it seems like, I imagine this could be one of those movies where people show up to the theater and like the movie they wanted to see is sold out, or they don't know what they're going to see, and they're like, ooh, Crimes of the Future, that sounds cool.
Is it like Minority Report?
Yeah,
what
is it like
that?
Time travel or like fighting robots in the future? Like, what's going on there? And they go in there and it's like,
Looper, this could be...
Yeah. And then they go in there and it's like, what is this?
I
mean, I love Viggo Mortensen just as much as the next guy, but I saw the trailer and went, oh, that looks interesting. I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, I was hoping it would be even weirder from the trailer. I think they show a lot of the weird stuff, but almost to a point where, well, this is all the weird things. You're going to see it a bunch of times, but it doesn't get weirder than this. And it's a pretty interesting premise, especially the people who have changed their bodies to adapt to eating plastic. I'd like to see a movie where, well, that was the beginning. We all did this. And then where does the world go to when we eat all the garbage in the world, and they're like making candy bars that are like purple and pretty much plastic based. And if you're not one of these trash eater people, it kills you. There's really interesting concepts, but yeah, David Cronenberg's not my favorite writer. I think he needs to direct more things that he doesn't write, or have someone get a pass on it. Visually, his stuff is always really interesting, but don't always love his stories. That's why like Existence is the best, because it does have weird body stuff, and it has an interesting story and a really satisfying conclusion, even if it is a little cliffhangery. It works.
Fair enough. All right. Well, if you're going to watch a David Cronenberg movie, I recommend History of Violence or Eastern Promises, both also starring Viggo Mortensen, and
yeah,
they're pretty badass. They're
his movies that
least gross.
Yeah, they're not super body horror
or weird.
Oh,
I mean, there's some awful things in there. Yeah, but it's violence based. But it's okay.
they're more straightforward stories as well. Anybody could really have directed those movies.
Sure,
or not everybody can direct a Fly.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily watch those movies and go like, oh, this is Cronenberg stuff.
No, not
by no means, but they are just more accessible. And History of Violence is a very small movie, but I like that it's small and badass.
It's Ed Harris that's in that, right?
Yeah, Ed Harris is in it, and William Hurt is like the big bad.
In Crimes of the Future, Viggo Mortensen, he's a much older man now. He's looking so much like Ed Harris. Yeah, he looks like they could be, I don't want to say father and son. I bet they're too close in age for that. They're brothers, but their parents had them. Once one got out of high school, then the other one came. But yeah, he's getting really haggard, just like Ed Harris. Okay, that's all I have to say about that. It's fine. Watch Existence. What do you got?
I watched season 1 of Shoresy.
The Canadian thing, right?
Yep, it's a spin-off show to Letterkenny. So Shoresy was a background character who only appeared in episodes here and there, and
just the back of his head.
With just the back of his head, because he's played by the star of Letterkenny, and so it'd be weird if these two characters who look so much alike were talking to each other and they weren't brothers.
Jack and Jill,
Yeah, but he's a very beloved character from Letterkenny because he just shows up and kind of insults everybody with these really ridiculous insults that are always really, really good. So it was kind of surprising when I heard he was getting his own spinoff, but then again, I guess it kind of makes sense because like, oh, now this actor can show his face in this other show and just create like this whole new thing. And I thought like, oh, maybe the show wouldn't work because this guy is only good because you use him in such small doses, and he does have such a weird voice, and he's not like a likable character. Like when he shows up on Letterkenny, his sole purpose is like talking about fucking your mom and just making everybody feel like shit. So it's like, how am I going to root for this guy? And what this show, I wouldn't say it's as funny as Letterkenny, but Letterkenny has a bigger cast. And obviously this is season 1, so I've grown to really enjoy all the characters on Letterkenny, and they've all had time to shine, where it's kind of just him and like 2 other people in this version. And none of the characters from Letterkenny show up in this. This is like, he's in a totally different town, and
Canada's a very big place.
Yeah. And
have you seen those maps of like, it'll show Canada and it'll have a couple of red spots and it's like 80% of Canadians live in these? Yeah. Jesus. That's a huge chunk.
Yeah, I always think like, man, the entire world is so overpopulated, but then you see that kind of stuff and you're like, oh, we've got plenty of space.
Like, oh, we have so much trash everywhere. Yeah, we do. But have you seen how big the ocean is?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. Just think of like how much open space is left on land, and then that's only 30% of the world.
Yeah.
Because water takes up the other 70. It's just
insane.
that
we've pollutioned it enough or we've dirtied it up enough that it's affected all those areas.
Right. But anyway, so
we got to start eating trash. Get that surgery.
So it's not as funny as Letterkenny, like I said, because I don't think it has quite the same cast as the other one, but it has potential to grow. It's only 6 episodes, 30 minutes or less, but what the show does really well, and it does has the same stuff that Letterkenny does well, is it has a great soundtrack. I think Jared Kiso is the creator and star. He definitely has an ear for like just really awesome like songs that pump you up. And so anyway, the show is about this character Shoresy, and his hockey team is the worst team in the league, and so they're gonna fold. They're gonna discontinue their hockey team, and so he's just like, don't do that. I love this team. It's all I got. Like you need to keep playing. It's like, all right, well we need to put butts in seats. No one's coming to see us. He's like, I promise this team will never lose another game. And there's only 4 games left in the season. And he's like, if we win every single game this season, keep the team. And the owner is this gorgeous woman. That's the other thing about the show is like everyone is attractive. At least all the women are attractive. Yeah. And then all the dudes are like these toothless Goombas, essentially, except for the main star. But anyway, so he has to assemble this like ragtag group of like
he bad news bears it.
Well, it's like he gets the 3 gyms from the prison, and they're like, okay, these are going to be the guys who kick everyone's ass. Like they're not there to score goals, they're there to fuck people up, and then we pull them off so we can score goals. And so when he meets them, they all go by Jim, and he's like, can I call you Jimbo, Jim Bob, and Jim Barino? And they're like, nope, our mom's name is Jim. We want to be called Jim. It's like, but you realize
brothers?
No, they're not related at all.
Okay.
They're just 3 guys named Jim who all work at the prison. He's like, well, you realize how that'll be confusing when I call you guys up to like go out on the ice. I can't be like, Jim, and you guys aren't going to know who I'm talking about. It's like, well, no. And it's like, all right, fuck it. And they just wouldn't let it go. So that's a running bit throughout the show. And they go around and get 5 guys who haven't really played hockey in a while, but they were like really good at certain roles. And anyway, so he forms this team, and their goal is just to win for the rest of the season. But he's a character, like I said, who like you shouldn't like, but because he loves hockey so much and he loves his team so much, that's kind of like how you anchor him into liking him. Anyway, long story short, it's a funny show. If you like Letterkenny, I've been pitching Letterkenny for a while just to like.
It's on the pile of many things I need to watch.
And it's weird because I've never seen 2 shows like this in terms of it's such a dude show because it is just about like both shows are about essentially like sports, beautiful women, and being nice to your boys, but it's also not like douchey, even though there are characters who are douchey. And it's also just a show of like catchphrases. Like it's every episode has like the same bits over and over again, and you should be tired of them at a certain point, but you never really are because it's just kind of like like going back to the gyms. They'll go like, all right, Jim, you ready? Yep. Jim, you ready? Yep. And then the third Jim is always like, Jim, you ready? He's like, yeah, buddy, I'm really excited to do this. Let's go. And he's always like the positive one, I guess. And that's always just, like the first 2 guys essentially say nothing, and the last guy always says something, and that's just kind of like the thing. Anyway, yeah, watch. If you're a fan of Letterkenny, Shoresy holds up. I think it'll get more seasons and take off. And if you love his insults, every episode he's just like his day job is he's a referee for high school hockey, so he's just insulting these high school kids, calling them like back knee face and all this other stuff.
Back knee face.
He always just makes fun of them for having like acne and going through puberty and stuff, and talking about fucking their moms too. Like my favorite joke was, "Hey, Kyle, every time I go over, your mom fakes jellyfish stings, so I'll pee on her."
That's funny. Yeah. I did keep seeing this like ad, and they would just be like, "Fuck you, Shoresy, for what?" And it was just everybody saying "fuck you, Shoresy," and his response was just "for what?" So I'm assuming he says something really fucked up or whatever, and they cuss him out or call him out on it, and he's like flabbergasted, like, oh, "What did I do?"
Yeah, that's something he says every episode. There's another thing that he always does where someone will start talking, and he'll go, "Huh?" and they have to stop and start again. And he does it all the time. Like, it's just weird stuff like that.
Is he not really hearing them, or is he doing it on purpose to make them start over again?
It's never really clear, but it's kind of just like it's probably just because he's being a dick.
Okay.
And he does it to everybody. And he's always just telling there's a side character. So a lot of indigenous people are on the show, which is another cool thing. And he's his like kind of partner in crime in this. He's not really that good of an actor, I don't think. He just doesn't deliver his lines with enough conviction for me. But he's kind of like the cute, adorable kid he's a full-grown man, but he's like the small one in the group, so they make him the coach because he's not that good of a player. But all the ladies like love him for whatever, because I guess he's just the nice boy. But he's always just like, "Fuck you, Sanguinet," and he's just like constantly insulting him. He's like, "Look, man, I'm the coach. You can't be insulting me." He's like, was like, "Look, you can insult me," and he's like, "I can insult you." He's like, "Yeah, would you do anything for me? Yeah. Would I do anything for you? Yeah. Then you can call me a fucking piece of shit. Now let's go back out there." So like that's kind of a nice thing. It's just like they're boys, even though they're constantly like just shitting in each other's faces.
Okay.
So
have you heard what's the creator's name?
Jared Kiso.
Like, people have been trying to push him for Wolverine.
I have seen the fan-made stuff.
It's like, he's short. I mean, he's like 5'8". You know, it's not super short, but he's Hollywood short. And
is he? Because
yeah.
Oh, I mean, I always thought he was on the taller end because he's like a big dude.
Yeah, but that was the thing. He's kind of short, he's kind of big, and he's Canadian. So
yeah.
But you know, can he do mean? Can he get gruff? Because he has kind of a higher range voice, from what I've heard. He doesn't have a deep bellowing Wolverine voice. He's on the higher side.
Yeah, he's on the higher side. At least on the shows. In interviews, I can't remember if he's kind of more, I don't want to say normal, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I wouldn't be disappointed if he gets the role, but I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I
think they kind of want a bigger.
They want a bigger name.
Because how do you follow up?
But Hugh Jackman was a nobody, and that's what's kind of perfect for this role. You get someone who's perfect for the role, and then they nail it. Now you have a superstar that you got cheap. Mm-hmm. You get Daniel Radcliffe to do it. Well, that's going to come with a price tag, and is he really going to want to do the next 8 Wolverine movies? So I think you go with a lesser known.
I would love to see Daniel Radcliffe as Wolverine, not because I think he's the best choice for Wolverine. I just kind of want to see what he does with it.
Yeah, let's go nuts with it.
Because I think Daniel Radcliffe's a great actor, but I never would expect Harry Potter to be the guy who's like busting out metal claws and cutting dudes' heads off.
Yeah.
But
yeah, well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Anything else on Shoresy?
No, I think I said all I need to say.
Okay. So the Orville came back, season 3. It's called it's not like Brave New World, but it is a play on
New Horizon, I believe.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I was worried that Orville didn't get a season 3, but it's now a Hulu exclusive, and I'm sure that was all up in the air with the whole Fox deal, because it was a Fox show,
right.
And now it's Disney, and so now it's on Hulu. And people who know me know I don't really give a shit about Star Trek. I should. It's right up my alley.
Sure.
But there's too much. I don't even want to get started. Yeah. It's just a deep dive I can't do. I
enjoyed the Chris Pine movies, but I don't care about the other Star Trek stuff.
Yeah. So when I first started watching the Orville, let me say, this show has probably one of the worst pilots I've ever seen. It's awful. It's pretty much just introducing the characters and not much else. Mm-hmm. And I remember just going like, oof, this is rough. Because some of the actors are not strong. There's one dude, I can't remember his name. He's the younger black dude in the show. He's awful. I do not know how he got this role. He is not an actor. He must be a stand-up comedian or a friend of Seth MacFarlane or something. This guy is garbage. And if these are the best takes that they're putting in the show, I could only imagine what his other takes are. But I'm not here to talk shit on him. It's fine. He's not in it all that much. But he's like one of the main science guys. So when he has to deliver a bunch of science gobbledygook, it just sounds stupid. Anywho.
Everything's quantum, right?
Yes. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, great. That's science, right?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
Quantum spanner? That's a thing, right? Oh, that's a Doctor Who thing, not a Star Trek thing. Yeah. Whatever. So, one problem the Orville kind of had was it didn't know if it was a comedic version of Star Trek or just another version of Star Trek, an homage, and it rode the line of comedy kind of... It didn't quite ride the line of comedy well enough. Jokes feel a little forced or out of place, and they really either needed to make this a super goofy show or take it a little more serious. And luckily, with season 3, they've definitely fallen on the side of serious stories. And so pretty much the first episode is there's a robot character on it, and he was like a sleeper agent of the other seasons. They're kind of like the Borg. They're this hive mind of robots that want to wipe out people. And he went bad and got a bunch of people killed, but then came along to the side of good and just defeated the bad guys. and they allowed him to stay on the ship, and that was the end of season 2. And it's just like, really, come on, this traitorous thing, you're gonna let him be back on the ship? And that's what this whole thing is. Everybody on the ship is shunning him. They think he's a piece of shit and he should go kill himself, because like everybody has lost 1 to 5 people that they knew, because so many ships were destroyed. And so it's like this moral thing of this robot eventually, he kills himself. He commits suicide because he realizes it would probably be better without him. And they're really good about, like what Star Trek was really good about, is just kind of having this dilemma and talking it through on both sides. And it's a parallel to things in our modern time. And it was a pretty solid first episode, and not very goofy. I think there was only one joke that I can recall. And I just really enjoy the show, even if Seth MacFarlane isn't the most convincing hero. I just kind of like the world that they're in. It's just fun. And I know everybody says, well, if you like the Orville, just watch Star Trek. I'm not watching Star Trek. Leave me alone. I'm going to watch the Orville. But yeah, it's back. Only one episode is out. I enjoy it. Watch the Orville.
You know, it's funny when you or I would go and meet people, and they're just like, oh, have you seen X or whatever? Not X the film, but
yes, I did.
You're just like, and in your brain you're going like, oh, this person's stupid for liking this thing. And then I can't imagine like you going to like a party or something and meeting people, and they're just like, and they're Star Trek fans, and they're just like, yeah, I haven't even seen Star Trek, but the Orville's good. They'd be like, this guy's a fucking idiot. And it's just like, well, actually, I'm into a lot of really awesome stuff. It's just I like this other thing that's basically a knockoff of the thing you like. But I get why you think I'm stupid.
And because I would probably be thinking the same thing, but sorry, I'm just not going to. It's like trying to get into One Piece now. You got 1,000 episodes to watch. I think I made that comparison before, but
I pass.
Yeah. Did you ever watch any of the Orville?
No. I like Seth MacFarlane. I like all of his shows. I even liked the movies that no one else liked. I'm a fan of Million Ways to Die in the West. I think there's some really solid jokes in there.
Yeah.
But when I saw the preview for that, it looked like a show that was trying too hard, and I didn't hear anything all that great about it. And when I saw the trailer for the new season, I was like, oh, that show is still on?
Good.
Wow. Yeah. So it's something I don't think I would dislike if I watched it, but I'm not actively seeking it out.
Yeah, I don't blame you. All right, what's next?
I listened to Batman Unburied. The series is over now.
All right.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about it on the show and recommended it to you. It was a fun listen. It was the first time I've ever listened to an audio show on Spotify.
Because it had sound effects and everything, right?
Had sound effects, yeah. So it was basically just listening to episodes of Batman, but you don't have the visuals, which I think to some people might sound like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to see Batman do Batman stuff. But just the way it's acted and the sound effects and music and all that stuff, it really is like a easy, fun listen to, like on your way to and from work. Each episode's 30 minutes or less. For those who may have not have heard the previous episodes where I talk about it a little bit. So in this version, it opens, Batman is a coroner. He works at the Gotham Hospital, where his dad is the owner and operator of it, and he's working on the bodies of the victims of a serial killer known as the Harvester, who kills his victims and then takes pieces of their body for unknown nefarious reasons.
I can't remember. Is it like take an arm or take an organ?
Organs.
Okay.
He might take like ears and stuff or something like that. He's not taking entire limbs. I don't think so. And it's just him trying to crack the case, and as the story goes on, I won't spoil it for you. We can talk about it in a future episode, because it won't take you long to burn through these.
I bet people will love hearing us bring this show up for the 4th time.
For the 4th time, yeah. I know. But anyway, it's a classic Batman tale. A lot of characters show up and are used in different ways. And when you hear Winston Duke's Batman voice, it is essentially just kind of like a Christian Bale, like, "This city, I'm Batman," like that kind of thing. So he's not trying anything new with the Batman voice. So if you're not a huge fan of the Christian Bale voice, get ready for that. But it is well acted, well written. I by the time it got to the end, I'm not sure if I loved how it ended, but characters that show up, I was like, oh, I didn't expect this to be the thing.
Okay. That seems to be such a case with so many comic book runs too. Like, man, those first 8 issues were amazing, and then they just kind of fell apart in that 9th one. You know, like when you were telling me about the Joker being good, and then it ended up with a giant gun trained on Gotham. Yeah. It's just like, really, you had this idea, and this is how you wanted to end it?
Yeah, it always just seems like the producers get a hold of it and it's like, okay, well, we need like a big finale. It's just like, well, Batman doesn't always need a big finale. Yeah. Like, can't it just be like a small detective case that he just cracks and it's more about the psychological thing that like messes him up, or the toll it takes on, maybe it has long-term effects on the city, but it's not like, oh, the city's underwater now or something. I mean, I wouldn't say it goes that big, but it's just it surprised me where it goes. Okay. Not in a bad way, not in a good way. It's just like, oh, that's fine. Okay. But the first few episodes are really great, and Hassan Minaj's The Riddler is a version of the Riddler I really, really like. Okay. I think he had a lot of fun with the role, and I've never really seen him act in anything other than him like playing himself. But I think he makes a really great Riddler. And yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you think as a big... You're more of a comic book guy than I am, so you might have different opinions where I'm more of a movie Batman guy, but I'm well-versed in Batman's comic stuff. But yeah, if you like Batman, it's a great listen.
Now, were you surprised with the reveal of who the Harvester is?
No.
You saw it coming? It's not too tough to figure it out?
I can't say anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I can't say anything.
Okay. We'll say it. Well, we have a few things that we both watched. So you played a game, didn't you?
I did. I played Sifu.
I love seafood. Psych, I don't. Seafood's gross.
Anywho.
Good joke.
Classic jokes. Yeah, so Sifu is a action-based revenge story.
Sounds kind of familiar from last week.
Yeah. I've been really into Japanese-style action games recently, I guess. So Sifu is a story of a young boy whose kung fu master is killed in front of him, and he spends the next few years training, and he seeks revenge on the 5 people who attacked his dojo and beat up all of his fellow students and killed his master. So this game, every time you are defeated, you age up a little bit. And the more you get defeated, the faster you age up. So you start out as a 20-year-old, and you can basically go up to like 75, 76 years old. And then if you get to that point and then you die, you have to start all over again. So this game is designed to be hard, but man, the combat's fun.
Yeah.
And it looks great, and the bosses are a lot of fun, but it is frustrating, especially because like as you're seeing your age go up, like the cool thing is like as you age up, you get more moves and experience points, and you become better at the game as the more you die. But the other problem is the older you get, your health goes down, but your damage goes up. So there's a balancing act. So you can't get hit as much, but it's easier to take guys down.
So like 38, the best year to be around. You're a little smart, you're a little tough.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the best thing to do is just not die.
Okay.
If you can.
Now, if you say you're really good at this game and you stay between 20 and 25, you can't learn those skills from when you're 40, 50, 60?
So you can, because there are ways to give yourself bonuses, but there are certain abilities that you can't get unless you hit a certain age. Okay. And there is a skill that you can sort of buy where you age back 5 years, and you can still keep, like if you got to let's say this move unlocks at the age 30, and you get to age 30, and you buy that move, and then you regress 5 years, you can still keep that move. Yeah. It's just, but there are certain moves you can't get unless you hit like 46.
It's not like, oh, I stayed at 20 the whole time. I didn't learn the crazy sweep move that defeats this boss. Now this boss is going to take 20 times longer because I didn't learn that sweep move.
Every boss is defeatable no matter what age you are, and there's no moves that you need to get that will necessarily make it each fight super easier. There's not like that one move that you get. It's like, okay, this is the move that's going to help me throughout the rest of the game. I mean, I guess depending on how you play.
I would assume there'd be like, this move is good for people with weapons. This move is good for heavier people.
Not really.
Oh, okay. So it's more of just like, you just have more moves to do things.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's certain skills like weapon mastery where your weapons don't break as fast,
Okay.
or like environmental master where you can actually like kick stools at people. Like that stuff is helpful, but it's by no means necessary to win or like an essential tool to beat guys.
But it's really cool looking.
But it looks cool. Like that's the other. It's just like you're unlocking cool stuff essentially. My biggest problem with the game is one, I played it on. First I played it on the medium difficulty, and I was not great. So it's a bit of a hard game. So if you don't like hard games, it might not be for you. But it's just the action is so fun, and they use like real kung fu masters to choreograph all the fights. So it's very satisfying doing these like finishing moves on all these guys and throwing them into stuff and bouncing their heads off the wall and taking a pipe and doing like a 5-hit combo on them and knocking them out. Like they do homages to movies. Like there's a scene, there's a part in the first level where the camera pans around and it's just like that long hallway shot in Old Boy, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun in that regard. But the other thing I don't like is that it's really short. So when I was getting stomped in medium difficulty, I switched to easy, and then I still died a decent amount, but I was able to buy the like reverse 5 years every now and then. So by the time I beat the game, I was 30 years old.
Oh, okay.
And it really, if you play it on easy, it rides that line of just because it's so short, it makes the game seem so easy. Where it's just like, oh well, like I kind of want to play it on medium just so the game will last longer, but I don't want to be as frustrated.
Sure.
So it's kind of
But now that you have
it was a hard balancing act.
So you have the skills now. Now you really know how the game is really played.
Sure.
And
I mean, it's fun enough to where I wouldn't mind playing it again. It's just I hope in the near future there's DLCs where they add a couple more levels, because there's only 5 levels and each level takes an hour or less. Okay. So it's essentially a 5-hour game. Which is never, when you spend $50 on a game, it's like, do you want it to be over in 5 hours?
$50 game?
Yeah, well, I got the Vengeance edition, so it came with like a book and pictures and other like added features.
Oh, you bought a physical copy?
Yeah, I bought a physical copy.
Okay.
So it originally released as a digital only kind of thing, but I was like, if I'm going to buy this game, I'm going to see if it comes out as a physical. I wasn't in a rush to get this game, even though I was excited for it. So I have the physical copy. I can let you borrow it if you want.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind borrowing.
But
I normally don't ask you for things mostly because you're such a digital buyer.
Well, I'm a digital buyer when they're on like super sales or they're free. So that's.
But if it's new,
But if it's new and I want it, then I'll get the physical. I'd much rather have the physical. But yeah, anyway, Sifu, a lot of fun. If you love Kung Fu, check it out. It's super quick game. If you like a challenge, it's definitely challenging. I hope there's more. It definitely the other thing is it ends and then you're just like, okay, well, there's not really room for a sequel here. It does tell kind of a full story, but I think it is a world I could see them going, okay, well, now in the next game we can add guns, because there's a club scene where it's just like, oh, this reminds me of John Wick, because you're just going through this like, club and just beating all these dudes up and throwing bottles in their faces, and I was just like, oh man, this would be so great, but like no one has guns, and so I think there's definitely a lot more they could add to this game, new moves they could do, new settings, and honestly, as I was playing this, I was like, there's a real movie here with story. It's a little bit lacking. It's very simple, because like the first level, you go and fight this guy who doesn't even speak, but he's kind of the guy who runs the drug making operation, but you don't really dive into that at all. You just know he's called the botanist, and there's like a flower that the game tells you like, oh, this is what they make drugs with, but it doesn't. You never see them like do drugs or making drugs, or
you don't have to take it and then you get a crazy.
Yeah, like it's just all these levels. Okay, so the first level is where they make the drugs. The second level is the club where they distribute the drugs. The third level is the museum where they say the girl isn't part of the crime syndicate anymore. She's gone legit and she like just sells her art. But it's like, okay, well, that's how they launder the money. And then the fourth level is like, oh, this is she's the fourth boss is called the CEO. She's the one who like runs the entire operation for like the main bad guy, and she's the one who's like, oh, this is the building where all things converge. It's like, so there's a story here that you can really go into. It's like, oh, you can tell a full movie or like a full season of a show where it's like, okay, it's this guy bringing down this entire operation, but it's not really about that. It's just like, okay, I need to beat up all these goons so I can get to the boss.
Yeah, because movies and shows are, you have an hour to tell, let's say it was a 5-season thing, or I'm sorry, a 5-episode season.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the game, you spend an hour doing that first one. It's mostly fighting. Well, you don't have that in shows and movies. So that fighting part is a 10-minute section, and then you have 50 minutes of really fleshing out the story. It's your medium. In a video game, not that there's not a need, but especially with this, it's like, it's not important to tell a fine, detailed story about every little bit of this. This is an action game. Mm-hmm. So when you translate it, you would get the inverse of that, and you'd have some great action, but now it's time to expand on that story. So
yeah, because it's like it's in an indescript city.
Mm-hmm.
It's never like
nondescript.
Thank you. A nondescript city. There's the character. I mean, the character.
Cityville.
Yeah. The main character speaks and everything, and but his whole goal is like, I'm gonna beat these 5 people,
mm-hmm.
and it's just like, I'm gonna kick anyone's ass who's in my way. But it's never just like, the city is in turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
There are these drugs, or these people have like ruined, like no one can live peacefully. Like the city's constantly filled with crime. It's not like I need to bring these people down for the betterment of everyone. It's just like, nope, you kill my master. And which, like, in a certain respect, I can get that motivation, and it's
mm-hmm.
fine. Like, yeah, I don't care about the city or these people. Like, I just want to kill the people who hurt me.
Yeah.
That's fine. But if you wanted to expand the story and kind of do more with it, there's story there. Sure. It's just, it never really goes into it. And as a fan of story and characters, I wanted that, and you don't get enough of it.
Stop playing certain video games then and start watching more movies.
Sure. But that's all I have to say about Sifu. Check it out.
Cool. I had on our list to talk about The Boys. I don't think we should. I think we should save it. We still have, what?
5 episodes?
I think just 8?
I believe each season is 8. Yep.
Damn. So 5 more episodes. So come back. Okay, we're on episode 36. Episode 41. So yeah, we'll talk about The Boys a little bit later. I mean, I have a lot to say already. It is the most shocking thing on TV. I just, anytime Seth Rogen produces anything, I'm just going to assume it's going to be disgusting, because he also did Preacher, and that show had some insanely disgusting things happen in it. But The Boys always, every episode, it's more and more. Every season, they raise the stakes. And this opener just blew my mind. I couldn't believe I was seeing what I was seeing, but we'll talk about it later. Unless do you have something you need to say about this?
Nope. Yeah.
And if you've already seen the episode, you know exactly what we're talking about.
I'm at a loss for words, frankly.
Yeah, but so I think before we get to our main topic, let's talk about Under the Banner of Heaven.
Yes, please.
So this show is on Hulu, starring Andrew Garfield as a Detective Pyrie. It takes place in Utah. He's Mormon. A lot of people in Utah are Mormon. It really has a big hold on the city. His partner is Native American, doesn't believe in Mormonism at all. So they're, two opposite cops, but they both, believe in the law. They have to solve a case of this woman who is murdered and practically decapitated. Her throat was cut many times, and so was her 15-month-old baby. And obviously they think it's the husband at first because he has blood all over him. He just found the body, and the whole show is pretty much him telling about his family. He has 5 other brothers. They're a pretty prolific Mormon figurehead in the Mormon community,
mm-hmm.
the Laffertys, and the parents are going on a mission, and so everybody's kind of given certain jobs, and because of their decision of who they put in charge of certain things, the name kind of goes into ruin, their finances go into ruin, and they start developing crazy ideas about the government and the old teachings of their religion and what they did away with just to appease other people, but they want to bring back, like polygamy and blood atonements. and you don't quite know, is it someone in the family that did this? Was it bearded strangers that they talk about? And it's just this guy kind of telling his story of how his wife, even though she was devout, kind of being with her made him realize how much the Mormon religion is bullshit in his eyes, and he wanted to get out of it and get out of his family's troubles and just focus on her. And it all comes to ruin.
Yeah, she was like a progressive Mormon. She's like, I'm Mormon, but there's things I think we could do differently.
Yeah, it's like, I want to go to school, and I want to get a job. And they're like, you really should be home just having babies.
Having babies and cooking dinner.
And it's like, well, I could do that, but let me do this first. Like, no, I don't think so. Oh, my husband is acting kind of weird. I want a divorce. No, can't let you do that. And just all these people and their egos and their belief system just leads to the loss of this woman's life and her small child.
So you kind of, not saying where you're from, but you were relatively close to Utah. Did you know Mormons at all growing up? I don't know exactly where you live in relation.
Well,
I used to live.
I lived in Southern California, and I also lived in Nevada, which is closer to Utah.
Okay.
But the Las Vegas Utah probably crossover isn't big. You know?
I would imagine so. Yeah.
But when I lived in Southern California, we actually had some Mormons down the street, and they were 5 kids, like 4 boys and a girl. I was the same age as the youngest. He was in my class, and then he had an older sister, and I had a younger sister. And so my younger sister always wanted to hang out with her, but she was just like a little too old to be hanging out with someone that young. But we got along. And actually, these fuckers, they ruined Santa Claus for me. I think I may have told this story even on this podcast, but we were playing basketball, we were just shooting hoops, and it was like, oh, are you excited for Christmas? What's Santa Claus going to bring you? And they looked at me and just like, Santa Claus isn't real. And like, told me all about it, told me it was my parents, and I'm crying. And
wait, what? Santa Claus isn't real?
I'm sorry, Steve. Cut this.
Mom!
So I went home crying to my mom, and of course my mom went over there and just like reamed out their mom, like, how can you let your kids ruin the fun, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, we stayed relatively okay friends even after that, but so that was my extent of knowing Mormons, and I didn't really know much about their religion. It was just, we were raised Catholic, they're Mormon. It was, in the same ballpark, but just a little different. And then as I got older, I learned more about Mormons, especially through South Park. They did a really good job of explaining some of the lore.
Yeah, that was my first sort of introduction to Mormonism. The classic John Smith song, Dum 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 Dum, and seeing all that. But I never really thought, like, okay, this is an accurate account of Mormonism. I imagine you can't quantify these people in a 22-minute South Park episode. Some of this has to be fake, but
they're
simplified.
Liberties.
They're taking liberties, yeah. So I always took that episode with a grain of salt. But then after watching this show, I was like, it's kind of accurate.
Yeah, and they don't do too much of like exactly what he did. Like, yeah, he looked into a hat with the things, but all the flashback stuff is really small pieces, and they kind of get past that initial writing of the Book of Mormon pretty early on. And so I knew a lot of that, but I didn't know Joseph Smith's like struggles and going to different places and being run out of town and tarred and feathered, and then his followers after he has died are like framing the Native Americans for these massacres. There was a lot of that. I did not know.
Yeah, I learned a lot in the show.
Yeah. And I'm assuming Mormons are going absolutely ape shit and just going like, how dare you represent our religion like this? It's not like this at all. But I think of all the religions, and I'm sorry for the Mormons out there, but yours is the dumbest. It just, it's like 100 years old, and it just, there's the logic that they have is so, and they have this thing about put it on the shelf. You got questions about something's not sitting right with the Mormon religion, put it on the shelf and then work through it with God. It's pretty much ignore all the things that don't make any sense and just listen to our scholars because they know what's right, because we have a new prophet. The fact that you have a living prophet right now, like, that's ridiculous. You're crazy. You're in a crazy cult. And like, you run a whole state, and all their laws are being passed that, obviously they can't like ban coffee or alcohol, because I've been to Utah and I had alcohol, but they have crazy rules of, we went to Chili's, we wanted to get beers, we were able to get 2 beers each, but you had to get a thing of like chips and salsa. That was like the bare minimum. You had to have food with your alcohol, and then you could only have 2.
Interesting.
You go buy beer in a liquor store, the alcohol content is much, much lower. Like these dudes are pounding beers and they're just like, I'm not getting drunk. What is this? Because the alcohol content is so much lower. So it's like you have this religion that is dictating. And I feel bad for anybody who's living in Utah who's not a Mormon, because you are just not living your best life.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's like they don't drink coffee or hot, even like most hot liquids. I wonder how good Starbucks does in Utah, because there are people in Utah who aren't religious.
Sure.
But
I think you're probably only going to see those in major cities, though.
Probably.
You're probably not going to go down Interstate 265, I don't know, interstates, and just like long stretches of open, like small towns, like you're not going to see a Starbucks there.
yeah.
You know?
Or if you go to a diner, do they serve coffee in there? If it's like a big Mormon community, would they even have it as an option? It's like, well, nobody really buys this except for the people driving through, so we're not going to even stock coffee.
I don't know. Let's just go to Utah, I guess.
Yeah. No. So I really like this show. It took me a little bit to get on board. It felt structurally kind of uneven. It's just like, well, we need to tell the story of what happened, so we're just going to pretty much sit around and go into flashbacks. But
Sure.
once you get used to that, it's really interesting. The whole Lafferty family is absolute crazy people, and people who are not super crazy and more progressive that become crazy and start believing these things, that believing that they're the chosen one. But like I said, I really enjoyed this, especially Andrew Garfield. I love seeing him wrestle with his own belief system.
Yeah. That guy, best actor working today, in my opinion. I fucking love Andrew Garfield.
Like, he did not win for Tick, Tick, Boom, but Will Smith wins for...
we're not going to get into it then.
God, so annoying. But yes, he deserves something. He's fantastic.
Probably get nominated for this.
Yeah, but then because nobody watched this.
But yeah, I don't think he would win, but I think he'll get nominated.
Yeah, that's why he's taking his 5-year vacation or whatever he said.
Like, I'm tired of losing awards.
Yeah, I know I'm good. I'm more than just the quote-unquote bad Spider-Man that now is everybody's favorite Spider-Man. But the thing I think hurts this is the end. You solve the case, but it doesn't tell you what happens afterwards. This is a true story that happened to real people, but we don't know what happened to the 2 Lafferty brothers who got arrested for these crimes. We don't know about the 2 guys who were there with them when the crimes happened, but didn't actually perform the murders. We don't know what happened to them. What happened to Pyrie after? Did he? I would assume he stuck with his religion because he wanted to stick with his wife, but we don't know. Did he do it just for the family, or did he get his faith back? We don't know. It ends, and this is a show that you would have a paragraph that comes up and says Ron Lafferty did this and Dan Lafferty did this, and do you know what happened to the Lafferty brothers afterwards? Did you look it up at all?
I have not at this time.
Well, spoilers for real life things.
Whoa!
So Dan was the oldest, right?
Dan was...
Wyatt Russell.
Well, Wyatt Russell wasn't the oldest.
Yeah, he is. That's why he was put in charge of the house. He was his...
Well, he was the second oldest. The oldest was Sam Worthington, who was supposed to be... And he was put in charge after Wyatt Russell's character failed.
I don't know. I think... even though I think Wyatt Russell looks younger, I think he's the oldest. Because he said, like... Cause,
I don't believe that to be true. Whatever, so...
His wife, the other one, wife, what's his name? Not Wyatt Russell.
Sam Worthington.
Sam Worthington. Didn't his wife, like, comfort him and be like, he had to give it to him. He's the oldest son. I'm pretty sure he's the oldest, and the other one's the second oldest. But regardless.
Regardless, yeah.
Anywho, so by the end, Sam Worthington thinks he's the prophet, and he has his brother with him, who's like the hand of God. He thinks he's a false prophet and chokes him out right as the cops show up.
Well, can I just say, I've seen this in a lot of movies and TV shows, but, religion aside, hand of God, voice of God, cool fucking names.
Yeah, they really are.
They just sound badass. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, continue.
So, yeah, they do get arrested, and Sam Worthington's character, like 3 months later, tried to commit suicide.
Oh.
And failed and caused brain damage. And they were both found guilty, but then they appealed for Sam Worthington. I feel bad calling it. It's not the real Sam Worthington, the character he played.
It's weird,
Ron
like,
Lafferty.
Ron, yeah, thank you.
Ron Lafferty goes through and he's found guilty, but then it got appealed because they're like, you said he was fit to testify, but because of his suicide attempts, he's not fit. And so he went into like a special needs home for years and years. And then eventually got tried again, and they tried to say he was unfit, but then they said, nope, he is. And it's just, he was going to, they asked like, well, what do you want to happen to you? And he's like, I want death by firing squad. And they said, no. And then Wyatt Russell, he's in prison to this day. He's still alive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which, it's interesting, because sometimes you hear it's like, oh, this person, killed 4 people, 20 years. And it's like, this person killed 1 person, lifetime.
Yep.
It's like, how do you decide this?
I don't know. It's like, was it in a fit of rage? Was it preemptive?
Yeah. Justice system is interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, yeah, and it's just like a simple little thing like that. They all had to just say, like, so-and-so was still in prison. So-and-so, tried to kill himself, but failed, and was executed at this time,
Yeah.
It's my only
I will say, as I think the show kind of rode the line of True Detective, where, not saying it hit the highs of True Detective by any means, because season 1 at least, because everyone was so involved with that show and whatever, but it rode that line of just like being so interesting and just like, what's going to be the twist at the end, like who actually killed, because there's so many. I honestly thought it was going to be one of the wives who killed her.
Yep, I thought it was going to be Wyatt Russell's wife.
And it just kind of turned out to be who you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't the twist. The twist is going to be something they do at the end. Like, they're going to... Cause at the end, one brother tries to kill the other one. It's like, oh, that's an interesting thing. Mm-hmm. But it happens... It's just like kind of like an add-on little bit at the end, and they don't actually do it. They stop them before they can. And then, like you said, it just kind of ends.
Yeah.
And
goes back home and prays with his family.
Yeah. Other than the ending, which I wouldn't say is bad, it's just like you just wanted more. I also really like the show. I think religion is a very interesting thing because I'm not religious. I guess I technically grew up Catholic, but I couldn't tell you anything about the Catholic religion other than, confession, I guess. Get you off
the hook, yeah. Do your 10 Hail Marys.
But anyway, I've always found religion interesting, and I think watching stuff like this is just like so frustrating because you see because I feel like everything we've seen about Mormonism from South Park and other kind of stuff, it always ends with, at the end of the day, they're good, decent people, and like they're allowed to believe whatever they want to believe as long as they're not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
But it's then when you see these kind of people who, like, when you start the show, they seem like the most loving family. And, like, at the beginning, you can see, like, okay, maybe they have some ideals I don't agree with. This show took place 30 years ago, and it's just like, okay, they kind of, like, have women a little bit more submissive than maybe other religions, and it's just kind of like, women don't have it as good. But it's like, but they all seem to love each other and care about each other, and they have these big families, and they're all supportive. And
the women, like, they look forward to that.
Yeah. And, they have no problem talking to strangers and bringing them in. Just like, hey, man, like, if you don't believe... It's like, we might not associate with you, but they just seem like they'd be nice to you no matter what. They, like, oh, you need a place to stay. You can stay here tonight. Have a good day, brother. Take it easy. And that's for, like, everyone in their religions. Like, everyone looks after each other's back. And so it's like, help. I see the appeal.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so if that's your core values of that religion, great. But then it's like, oh, well... now we want to do this. And it's like, just seeing people go, well, I'm the Messiah. Well, know what? I'm the Messiah. It's like, oh, well, God speaks to me and he's telling me to do this. It's like, but it's all just these men who are trying to push their own agendas, and it just keeps going too far and too far. It's like, oh, well, I said God told me, God wanted me to do this. And they were like, oh, God speaks to you? Cool, we'll do that. It's like, oh, well, if I got him to do this, I can keep getting them to do other things. Yeah. And it's just this, it's just, everyone using God to justify actions.
Yeah.
And it just gets progressively and progressively more insane until it gets to the point where everyone's just like, you know, we need to get the hell out of here. Mm-hmm. And it's so like, I'm not someone who's anti-religion. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good things that religion's done.
Sure.
But there's so much bad stuff that it's done. And just the logic and justification of this is just like, no, that's you're a crazy person. That's insane that you think this way. And they're like, yeah, we recognize it's insane, but it makes us happy. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I want you to be happy.
Yeah.
But it's insane.
Yeah. But I love the line that the victim's husband says, like, this religion is just men's egos.
Sure.
And it just allows them to do whatever their hearts desire in the name of God. Mm-hmm. And especially, like, they go, oh, God talked to me, and let me read it out. And then they just vote. Is this the voice of God? Oh, yeah. Everyone raises their hand, and they go, cool, scripture. Like, God just talked to this guy. And I can't see believing so heavily in something like that you can see it in front of you and go like, oh, my God, a miracle is happening. God is actually talking to this person. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, like, them hold these votes, and there's just one, like, I want to see a religion where they keep one guy who's a devout non-believer, who's just kind of, like, in the background to kind of give them all reality checks. Yep. It's like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, guys, you all see this, right? I mean, there's a scene in this where they're just like, okay, we vote, you're the new Messiah. Go write us new laws. And he goes upstairs, and he's like, doesn't know what to write. And then he comes back down and is like, my new law basically says my wife is going to come back to me. It's like, and they're like, cool, I guess that's the new law. It's like, it's specifically pointing out his wife.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's crazy that God's talking to me about the things I need and want. Wow.
Yeah, I better go call my wife and say, like, oh, I'm the new Messiah. I wrote this new scripture, and the scripture says, your name needs to come back to me and obey all the things I say. It's like, yeah, and everyone's just like, cool. Yeah. No one's going, there's no way that's true.
Because it all benefits them, too. Yeah. Like, it would be the women that would go, excuse me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, there's a scene in the flashback where Joseph Smith is telling his wife, hey, I'm going to take extra wives. And she's like, I don't think so. God didn't tell you that. And like, yeah, he did. And like, well, fine. I'm going to take extra husbands. And he goes, wait, God's coming to me now. He says, you can't have extra husbands. And it's just like, such the narcissism that these people have. And it's like, you don't truly believe anything. So you just have these specific things you want to have happen, and you're going to just use manipulation to get everybody to do it for you.
I think that might have been my favorite scene in the show, because a normal person would go, maybe not a normal person, but it just seems like that'd be the kind of thing you're just like, all right, well, you know what, we'll put it on the shelf, we'll table this, and then he'll walk away, come back an hour later and go like, well, God spoke to me, but he did it in real time in front of her. Yeah. Like, the audacity to go like, oh, we're in an argument. In order to win this argument, I'm just going to say it right now.
Yep.
God said no. It's like,
it was like he was on the phone with God at the time. Yeah. It was like, oh, wait, hold on, God. Wife saying something. Yeah, God, do you want her to have husbands? No. God says no. Sorry. It's for me only.
And I found the flashbacks really, I think I was surprised to see these flashbacks to colonial times or whatever, where the Mormons are migrating to Utah or whatever. But I was like, oh, this is like a whole separate show. Oh, yeah. It's like, I'm surprised no one's done. It's like, oh, let me tell the origin of Mormonism from the beginning, not in flashback form. So I'd be interested to see that show as well. But now that I've had the pieces, I don't think I need to see that show. But if that show existed before I saw this, I'd go like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But now I want to see more shows like this. And just, if this was... we talk about anthology shows a lot, but it's like, give me an anthology show that breaks down all the religions and all the ludicrous things they believe and the pros of the religion, the cons of the religion, and just give me all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the false prophets.
Frame it in a way of a murder, I guess. I don't know, because murder's always cool.
Yeah, FX just like start finding other large case murder mysteries that had a religious background to it. But yeah, this was one of those shows that just saw an ad for it, and I said, I like Andrew Garfield. Why not? I'll give it a go. I
don't really watch things because I'm an actor, but I think because the sole reason I watched the show was because Andrew Garfield was attached to this. Yeah. And I'm glad I took the leap and watched it. And we didn't talk about his partner really that much, but I really liked his partner in this. I thought he was a good back and forth, and the sense of basically being the only atheist, or maybe not atheist, but the only non-Mormon, on the police force.
Yeah,
and
you could just call out the bullshit.
But he wasn't ever like, you
You're
need
an
to
idiot.
stop believing, or you're an idiot. It's just like, you're the more. I'm going to point out what's wrong with your religion, and how absurd it is, and like where even with my people, how your people have screwed my people over. I'll point that out to you. And it's like, this is what we were told versus what you were told. But I like that he was never like, quit your religion, but I'm not going to let you like slide on this shit because you're kind of too close to it.
Yeah.
Because I never really thought about it, but like, imagine a police force that has all the same beliefs as a large community of the people, and then when you interact with people who aren't in your thing, it's like, well, I'm more likely to arrest you because of your beliefs versus...
We're the chosen people, not you.
Or like, oh, I know these people, these are my friends and family, like they're all my brothers and sisters. They wouldn't do this. The Mormon religion wouldn't let them do it. It's like, but they can and they do.
Yeah, and they had a lot of the elders coming up and going like, look, we don't need the bad press. It just makes us look bad. Let's just let this go. And that's the one of the main shitty things about religion, of just that sort of blanketed, well, he's a man of God, so he couldn't possibly do that. And when those people are in your courts and are your cops, then you just have such a corrupt force, and true justice doesn't happen. And it's every court. It's every police. Station? Department.
Police department. Yeah. And it makes me. I don't know that much about Scientology. I think I did watch that Going Clear thing, but years ago, but I've forgotten all about it. But it did kind of remind me of certain aspects of that. Not saying that Scientology is anything close to Mormonism, but just I remember watching parts of that going like, oh, they sent people after other people and tell them like, keep quiet kind of thing. And just like, oh, well,
we're going to harass you until like, I remember that in that they were sending fax machines of just like black paper to like use up all the toner in the receivers. And it's like they would just use that sort of harassment tactic. Like, look, you're going to report on us, we're going to make your life hell.
Sure. And it's just, you see it, and Scientology is even newer than Mormonism. So if Mormonism's 200 years old, whatever it is, and then Scientology's 60, I don't even really know.
Probably older than 60, but not too much older.
Yeah, it's one of the newer religions, and it's just like, well, they're all cults that become religion, and then they're no longer cults. They're just, oh, this is a belief system. It's like,
you get enough people, and as long as you're not like making them commit suicide to go on to the UFO that's following the comet, as long as it's not one of those suicide cults, you can turn any sort of thing into a major religion. You just got to have enough people who believe in it.
And you watch these movies and TV shows where it's just like, how are people believing this stuff? Like, the evidence is all right there, and it's like, well, it was a different time. It's like the 80s. It's like they didn't have the internet, or it's like
we still had science though.
It's just like it. But it's still happening today, and it's just like the age of the internet. You would think like, oh, we have all these like it's the age of science and logic in a certain sense. Information. But then at the same time, so I imagine like there's a lot of people who are in religions who are leaving religion because I was like, okay, well, I'm seeing all this stuff because the internet has allowed me to view these things that I never would have gotten because I lived in such a close community where we didn't have internet or whatever. But
then you have the opposite.
But then you have the opposite of just like, well, the world is flat and
vaccines are tracking devices.
Yeah, just like in the age of also misinformation and conspiracy theories, everyone's just like, well, I might as well join this religion because these people over here say that I can, not listen to women ever. I'll join that one. It's like,
I'm going to have multiple wives and I'm going to live forever after I die and it's going to be paradise.
There's actually aliens that live inside me that will give me superpowers and I can join the great ooze when I die. And,
it's the internet is filled with information to enlighten you, or it can be your echo chambers to just hear the things you want to hear. And then it just solidies your beliefs.
Or anything you see that goes against their religion on the internet is the devil working through the internet. It's the devil's work. Oh, my God. Anyway, enough about religion. We're going to get...
This should have been our main topic, because our main topic is love, death, and robots, and we're not going to go episode by episode and talk about all of them. That's 35. We're going to talk about our top 5 favorite and our top 3 least favorite.
Yep.
And overall, you just
recently watched these.
Yeah, so I had never... So for years, you and other people have pitched me Love, Death, and Robots, and I think people who have gotten to know me and go like, Steve, you'll be into this kind of thing. And everything I've ever heard made it seem like there's nothing about the show I would dislike. It's something I think for a long time I knew if I watch it, I would like it. It was just never on my to-do list. And so for whatever reason, I was like, know what? Let me give this a shot. Because I'm a big fan of short films and love Death and Robots. So I finally gave it a try, and it's good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a fantastic piece of must-see media, but I really liked most of it.
Yeah, I would agree. Most of it is pretty good, and season 1 is definitely longer than 2 or 3, so you have a lot more hits and a lot more misses. I think season 2 feels really underdeveloped. Like, re-looking at them, there's a lot that I like about it, but they're not great.
Yeah.
None of them really stand out as being amazing. And then season 3 feels a lot more focused, and everyone's kind of a hit, except for one, in my opinion. Yeah, this was kind of a out of nowhere hit for Netflix. They just dropped it, and then in a day, everybody I knew was talking about it.
Yeah, of all the stuff they've come out with, this is, I think, the biggest surprise to me of like, oh, this is a thing that people are like really watching. Like Tiger King makes sense to me. House of Cards makes sense to me. Sure. Like, big releases, all that kind of stuff makes sense. But short films about science fiction, like I never thought would like really find an audience, especially because I feel like most people I want a series that I can dive into and characters I like, and I can binge all 10 episodes in a day or over time, whatever. But just like little short stories that have no long-term potential. Like,
well, no, that's
not the right word.
Yeah,
but
it isn't, because I think this seems like a weird thing for Netflix to put out, because it's like, okay, not everybody likes animation, not everybody wants horrific, violent, and nudity animation on top of that. Cartoons are just for kids, and nah. But I also think this is a really smart idea, because if you have one story that is just absolutely excellent, you could just turn it into a show if you really wanted to. So many of these can be a longer movie or an entire season
100%.
of something. So
that's what I like about it and also dislike about it.
Yeah, that's true. It's a tease that you're never really going to get more of. But for Netflix, I could see them going like, well, maybe 2 or 3 of these will be great, and we could spin off into a whole new thing. And maybe Love, Death, and Robots is a good way for smaller creators or less known creators to get their work out there and get an opportunity. So I'm hoping this just becomes a yearly thing. They drop 8 or 9 of these once a year, and we just get really cool, gory, bloody, fun, inventive, scary things.
Agreed. All right, so do you want to do bottom 3 or top 5 first?
Let's get the bottom out of the way, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I have more to say about the good stuff, and
or actually, do you want to do... Well, I guess we'll do honorable mentions before the first one. All right, we'll do our top 4, and then right before the big one, for any ones we haven't listed, we'll do honorable mentions.
And then the number 1.
And then the number 1, yeah.
But we'll do bad first.
But bad first, correct.
Okay, sure. I mean, I do have honorable mentions even for the bad.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll just say those 2 were Ice Aged and The Drowned Giant. Both kind of fun and interesting, but not enough for me to really care. Especially Drowned Giant. I could see more of that, especially if it was like a, what are they called? Daniels. I could see that being like a Daniels movie. But it's like... interesting, and nothing. Yeah. And then Ice Age is like the only one that has live action in it, and it's a small society in a freezer, right? It was season.
Oh, Ice Age, yes.
Ice Age, yeah. And it's...
Sorry, I was thinking of the whale one.
Oh, no, yeah.
I like Ice Age.
And it was fun, but I think it doesn't belong in this series. It was like such an odd one.
It's out of place.
Yeah. So those are my honorable mention.
Okay. For bottom.
For bottom, yes. Yep. Okay, so what's your number 3?
Number 3 is from the newest... I think it's from the newest season. Oh, God. I didn't want to do this.
Didn't you write them down?
I did write them down, but I don't remember if this is season 2 or season 3. I think it's season 3.
What's it called?
The Tall Grass. That's
season 2.
That's season 2?
The guy on the train?
Yeah.
Wow. Really? Worse.
It's not the worst.
No, but number 3.
But number 3 on the...
See, that's one of my honorable mentions for best.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so for me, I think that Tallgrass has... I like the animation style, and I like the concept, but it's just something that didn't really go anywhere for me, and that's the big problem. I didn't get a sense of the main character, or like why I should really give a shit about him. Him walking into Tallgrass and seeing the glowing lights is like, oh, that's kind of interesting, and then just seeing, but the big shocker at the end is seeing how many lights were in this field. But you just, the only thing you really know about the whole scenario is just like, yeah, we ride this train, and every now and then I guess a portal opens and these things appear and then they just disappear, and it's like, that's interesting.
That's it. Yeah, but that's it.
But that's it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get, there's no real twist, there's no real story. It's just like, here's a thing, and then it's over. There's nothing that you learn or gain a sense of. Like, they're just glowy zombie kind of creatures. They aren't visually all that appealing. The biggest part is like that they glow and they're kind of faceless, bitey monsters. But yeah, it's like, this is something I'd like to know more about, but the fact that you get nothing from this at all, it makes it a number 3 on the list for me. It's lack of the missed opportunity that was there. I think is the biggest reason why.
All right. Well, for my bottom list, I wanted to make sure I get one from each season.
Okay.
So number 3 is from season 3, called The Very Pulse of the Machine. It's the only one of season 3 that I didn't love. And it's people on a planet, and they're trying to get to a mile marker, and there's tectonic shifts and explosions, and they get kind of stranded, and one of the people die, and she is dragging her body so she can use her oxygen, and she's trying to get back home, and it's like 20 kilometers away or something like that. Really nice looking, beautifully animated, and most of these are really good looking shorts, but there was just really nothing to this, and it's just, she's on a trek, she kind of has a weird little like trip and kind of sees the world what it is, and then it's done.
This, if I had an honorable mentions for bottom, this would be on it, because this almost made my list, but it didn't make my list solely because I liked the look of it, and I kind of liked that it was a trip. Like, I think if you got high, this would be one of the ones to watch, just because it is kind of out there. But there was more of a story to it, and I wanted to see, does she make it, does she not? So I was kind of more invested in this character and everything. So there was something a little bit more there for me. That's why I didn't make my bottom 3. But I get why it's in yours.
All right, what's your number 2?
Number 2, starring the great Michael B. Jordan, Life Hutch in season 2. This is the one where he is a fighter pilot in some space war, and he gets shot down on a planet where he has to go to this sort of small way station. And when he gets inside, there's just this malfunctioning killer robot. And if he doesn't move, the robot doesn't see him. But he has to sort of find a way to stop this thing that's really hard to destroy without moving too much, and it will steps on his hand and like breaks his fingers, so he has to like stay quiet. And it's like, it had potential to be this cool story of this man stuck in this thing with this monster that he needs to defeat, but it's just, well, one, I didn't like the look of it. I kind of lean away from the ones that are super realistic, because then at a certain point it's just like, well, just shoot a live action, because I think it had potential to be a cool, contained story, but I just didn't care about anything. I didn't care about the look of this one. I didn't, the lack of, I like how he kind of defeats it with using a flashlight against the wall, because any sort of movement it'll try and attack. Like, I like how he was able to, defeat this monster at the end, but it just was a story that I just didn't care about, and just didn't do anything for me, and I didn't care about the look of it, and it was the most unexciting of all the shorts. There wasn't any real twist to it. It just man stuck in room with killer robot. but
and I think
it didn't do enough with it.
That's one of those stories of like it's so simple. Man stuck in a room with robot that only sees through movement. How do you write a whole movie around that? And if you do, you can make a really interesting story.
Yeah.
And I get your point, but I did like this one. It was kind of like the Jurassic Park kitchen raptor scene.
Yeah, I think you'll see a big part of my list is just missed potential, and where like if it was expanded on, I think it could be something I really do like.
But as a standalone story.
But as a standalone, it's just, you have the space war, which is just in the background. It's like, well, maybe that could be interesting. And then as you get to this way station, I don't even know what was this robot the enemy, or was it a thing that they used to fight these things and it just malfunctioned in a way where it's just like, anything that comes through here, I'm going to kill, because it just doesn't recognize that it's human or whatever it is. And like, I don't know, I just didn't care about this one at all. It didn't do anything for me. And then he defeats it, and it's like, all right, I guess someone's going to pick me up because I can finally like reach the comms or whatever to get somebody. But yeah, nothing there.
This isn't one I would ever skip if I was doing a rewatch, but I get it. So my number 2 is Fish Night, season 1.
Okay.
Once again, really nice looking. You got some glowing fish in the sea, like 2 salespeople their car breaks down, and then they're in a desert, and they all have visions of weird things in the sky. Right?
Yeah.
That's about it. And it's just like, okay, it shows off really good animation.
This might be Miley's favorite from season 1.
Yeah, but there's just nothing to it, and not every one of these is like, man, if you were like stoned, this would be so cool. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not, and it's not very entertaining, and it was probably the most boring. It's not like the dumbest one I've seen, because there's one that didn't make my list. It's like the first one of season 2 with the old lady and the robot.
Yeah,
I hate that one. It's awful, but I think there's a little something to it compared to...
There's comedy there.
It's just like, fish in the sky. Okay.
Yeah, the ghosts of prehistoric fish that are all neon colored, like visually appealing, but what's the story there?
Yeah.
But at least in that one, I could see people, I was like, oh, wow, this is so beautiful. Like, I want to be a part of this, and, it doesn't seem like they can harm me, and then this guy just... It was Icarus flying too close to the sun. It's like, oh, look at this. And then he goes up there and gets murdered by a giant shark thing. I don't know. I not one of my favorites by any means, but because it was visually appealing, I don't necessarily hate it. Okay. But I see why you do.
What's your number 1?
My number 1 is something that you clearly didn't hate that much, but The Drowned Giant is my least favorite of all of Love, Death, and Robots. And... once again, it's just a potential thing. I watched this one the other day, and I don't really remember what it's about. It's just a researcher who's like having this existential narration dialogue, talking about like where this thing come from and yada yada yada, and just like all these people are just like playing on its giant dead body, which I can see people doing, but. They talked about, oh, we're going to do research on it, but you never find out anything about the research. And then it's like, oh. Well,
just slowly is getting picked apart.
And then you like, cut it into pieces, and it just, gets eaten by seagulls and shit, and slowly pieces of it drifting back in the sea. And it's just like this guy going like, oh, it's so sad to see this giant creature we know nothing about just slowly dissipate into nothingness, and yada, yada, yada. It's like, what is this? What is this episode about?
Maybe it's the passivity of like, oh, we have endangered animals, and we're letting we're catching all the fish in the ocean. We're just standing by, going like, wow, ain't that sad?
Or they're like, there's magic in the world, and look at this beautiful creature who we never got to know, and then we use it for entertainment, and then we just let it go.
Strip it for resources, and
it's like there's something there, but I would much rather have seen like, oh, what's this thing? And they do all this testing, and at the end, you just see like an army of giants like walking out of the something. I don't know. It's just it was just so boring and just uninteresting to me. And I'd like to know more about this giant, or why this thing exists. Is it the only one that's ever existed? Yeah. Is it just a freak anomaly? Is it a science experiment gone wrong where this guy, was a normal dude, and then he, gamma radiation blew it up, but he was in the middle of the ocean, so he drowned and drifted ashore. It's just. And then, but it just ended. I was like, what did I just watch? What was the point of this? I don't care.
Going like, you guys don't understand what short stories are. Like you're wanting more, but that's not the point. Like,
but see, when we get into the ones that I do love, these are what short stories, in my opinion, should be.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just, I think you can, if you can tell a complete story and make it interesting. I mean, by no means do I expect all the answers or to expect a ton of character development necessarily in a 20 or a 10-minute thing, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And that's when it's great. It's like you can tell a full beginning, middle, and end story in 10 minutes.
Yep.
But then it's just like, oh, I have a concept. Here's an idea, but we're not going to explore it. Well, then you just wasted the idea to me.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So The Drowned Giant, most of the Love, Death, and Robots episodes, I wouldn't say I disliked. This one I disliked.
Okay. My least favorite one is also a season 2. I think it's like the second episode. It's Ice, where the kids are running across ice and whales chase them. That's it. I mean, yeah, there's a story. He's like saving his brother, and people are enhanced, right?
People are enhanced. He's not.
He's not. And so, yeah, he's just some normie, and he wants to run with the whales, and his brother's one of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like if I remember correctly, it's like this is one that I watched like a year ago, and it's one of 2 I watched a year ago, and so I didn't rewatch it in my new watch. But I remembered enough, and I think it's like a rite of passage. It's like something the cool kids do. It's like it's kind of dangerous, and you can, there's a chance of death, but most people always make it back because we are enhanced. But because he's not, he's pretty much, it's a suicide mission.
Yeah. This was just boring. I even if you expanded this out, I don't care about this world. I don't care about these characters. I'm not interested. This one, because it like. Watching season 2, the first one was that one with the old lady, and then I think it was this one, and it just made me go, "Ew, what are we getting into?" Because in season 1, you start very strong, and you go up and down from there. Season 2 is just kind of like wet fart after wet fart, and there's only maybe one that I'd say I liked in season 2. Everything else is just kind of nothing too bad, and I think this is bad.
Okay, I mean. Once again, this probably make an honorable mention of just like it's a whatever one for me, but I at least liked the animation in that one, and I
can't fault any of these for their animation for the most part.
For the most part, there's some, but yeah, the animation I liked, and I'm always interested in because this isn't Earth, it's an alien ice planet they decided to live on.
Was it not like a Pluto or a Uranus? Was it a new planet?
I think it was a new planet. Okay. I think it had like some nondescript name of just like Klaxar 9 or something like that. I don't fucking know. But yeah, they're just on some ice planet with ice whales. But it's just seemed like a real dreary place to live. Like there seemed to be a culture there, and just
there's
like
an industry.
We're just survivors who are just working this planet, but they're all kind of like poor and I think doing drugs and stuff. And
isn't it like his family? Like, well, we moved here to get ourselves a new start, and it's like, well, I don't want to be here. I'm the new kid in town, especially not being powered. And
like there's stuff to work with here.
Sure.
So that's why I did make my list, but I get why.
Mm. Now that we got rid of all the bad stuff, let's move on to the good stuff.
Which I think... I'm going to guess that there's 3 on here that we agree on. That's my theory.
I would not doubt that. Now, with my best, I did not try to get something from each season because I don't like season 2. And none of them are good enough to make my list. So I have 3 from the first season and 2 from the third season.
Okay.
All right. You start.
All right, so my number 5 is one I don't think will be on your list.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed Shapeshifters from season 1.
Werewolves in the Army, right?
Werewolves in the Army, yeah. I
love that one.
I think it has a solid beginning, middle, and end. You get introduced to these characters, and they seem like normal guys, and then one guy gets shot, and then you kind of see his eyes change, and he's like, they're over there, this distance, and they get ambushed, and then they defeat him. And then you find out that they're, they have powers and they call them, dogs or whatever. So like, okay, these guys are werewolves or whatever. And you find out they're werewolves pretty quick. Yeah. But I liked that the army is like using these guys, and then pretty much everyone else who are humans like fucking hate these guys, and they're kind of outcasts because like, they're these beasts. They're not humans anymore. Yeah. It's like we can't trust them. They're spawns of the devil or whatever the reason. Yeah. So there's these outcasts in the army who are like sacrificing their lives just as much as everybody else. And in certain sentences, it's just like we're taking on more risk because we're not even like really using guns.
Yeah.
We just have a higher healing factor than you guys and certain set of skills. But then
And claws.
and claws, yeah. But then him and his buddy get separated. His buddy goes on a mission without him, or goes to different part of camp, and that part of camp gets attacked, and his buddy gets like brutally mutilated, and everyone else with him, and everyone's just like, all right, well, it was werewolves that attacked. Your people are the ones who killed our men. It's like, we don't fucking like you, man. And he's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna help you guys get him back. But then he goes on his own and finds the Afghanistan werewolves that did this, and then you just have like these really awesome, like, I love werewolf changing scenes.
Yeah.
And you're not quite sure, are they gonna make them just big wolves? Are they gonna make them like scary werewolf types? And then with scary werewolf types, and then you just have these like brutal, just awesome
ripping each other apart,
tearing each other apart. Awesome fight, werewolf fight scenes where he kills 2 werewolves, and then he kind of like walks back into camp with his buddy's body, and just, I don't know, it just a really great story. And I wanted to see, like, this is one of the ones I wanted to turn into a movie. It's just like, show me werewolves in the army. That's fucking cool.
Yeah. After this was done, my brain immediately went, well, there's other movie monsters. Where do they fall in line in the military? So it's
sure, there's something there, but I didn't care about that.
Black Lagoon is, that's Navy, and they do a lot of like, or Coast Guard maybe.
Yeah.
The vampires would be more aerial things.
Mm-hmm.
Your werewolves are your ground troops, and then you have like your armies of zombies, maybe led by a Frankenstein type character. Yeah. I don't know where the Mummy fits into all this, but
the Mummy's the villain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I always enjoy taking people with powers and putting them in real world scenarios and like how they would fit in. So like, okay, so we have these people with special abilities. Let's put them in the military because they can do things our other guys can't in terms of like tracking everything. And I liked that you really got a use of all their powers and how they would fit into these different scenarios in a very quick amount of time. And you had characters who you liked from the get-go because they were down for the cause, even though no one else liked them. And they looked out for each other, and they had a brotherly bond, like touching heads, and I don't know, it's just, you really got a lot of character work in a very little amount of time, and the action scene at the end was really fucking awesome and brutal, and I'd like to see more. And it reminded me of, it was one of those wasted scenes where you had, like, mutants in Vietnam in X-Men Days of Future Past, I think it was, but you never really saw them do anything with it. It was just like, oh, we used them in war, but you never see them.
You see Wolverine in X-Men Origins Wolverine in the Civil War, in World War II, in Vietnam, but you don't see him do anything.
Yeah, but that's kind of boring because he's just there because, like, oh, I can take bullets.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think you could have done a really cool scene of, like, okay, imagine Pyro in in Vietnam, because you've seen footage of like dudes doing flamethrowers into like bunkers and stuff. Like, just have that same footage, but take like digitally impose the flamethrower guy out and just put him in, like using his palm, and just like you can do really classic shots of Vietnam and just you have the guys with powers. And I think I want to see war movies with superheroes in them. I think that'd be cool.
That'd be very cool. All right, my number 5 is Sunny's Edge, the first episode of the first season. Now, this isn't the greatest story.
No.
But the idea of just a pit fight, an underground pit fight with crazy monsters, that's all I need. Show me a ton of those. I don't need to know their backstories, or even like play it as a show like boxing or wrestling, and you have, the announcers saying, from parts unknown, weighing 4,000 kilograms, whatever, give them a little bit of backstories and talking on the mic of, oh, my lizard man's going to defeat your robot man. I don't need in-depth story when it comes to just monsters kicking each other's ass. Okay. And they were cool, and it was violent, and I loved it.
Yeah, this one is one that had a lot of potential for me that I wouldn't say it was anywhere near the bottom, because I really, really liked the animation style, and I liked the fight scene because that was real brutal, and I liked the look of the girl's creature, and I liked the idea of like, oh, okay, this is things that you can control with your mind. They're essentially.
We didn't even talk about our honorable mentions.
No, we said we were going to do it before the
before the first one. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Go on.
But yeah, I'll just say this one didn't make my top 5 solely because like it just wasn't really there for me story-wise. but visually it was really appealing, and I was like, oh, this could be cool if they expanded it a little bit more.
And I think this one hit with me just because I didn't know what I was getting into watching this series, and it came out with a bang of a really good-looking, violent thing, and it really just stuck with me.
Sure.
And like this is how you start a show. You really just wow them over. And then the second one was like the 3 robots doing their little comedy bit, and then by then it's like, okay, I know what this is about. You're gonna have a little bit of violence and serious stuff. You're gonna have some more lighthearted moments, and just with those 2 episodes, I knew what I was getting into, and I really love that first one. What's your number 4?
Number 4 is the Emmy-winning The Witness.
Oh,
yeah.
This is my number 3.
Okay, I had a feeling this would be one of the ones that made your list.
This one is great.
So this one looks a lot like Arcane in terms of style. If you're a fan of Arcane,
do you know if it's the same?
I looked it up. He didn't work on. It's just a style that I don't know if they took from him or whatever. But he's had nothing to do with Arcane as far as I could see.
But like Arcane, it has that really good, like the model work is very realistic in how people like move and interact, but it has the paint of something a little more outlandish, and I don't want to say cell shaded, but it's more punk rock, where the animation style is a little more, I don't want to say classical, but more realistic.
So I really like this one. It was one, if there wasn't the weird jester character, there's essentially like no dialogue in this. And it's just a really long chase sequence where, you know, you open up and you see a man standing over... well, our main character is this girl, and she essentially believes she has seen a murder. And the guy
from across the street.
She's in her apartment. She looks into the apartment across the street, sees this guy like kind of covered in blood, and he looks at her. So he's like, "Oh shit, he's seen me, and he knows where I live, so I need to run." And then you see this guy pretty much just chase her all across town. Which the only comment I have about this, there's like no one who lives in this major city during the day. You never see anyone on the street. Like she's like running and screaming and. Just no one's in this city at all.
They're all at the club with the jester.
Yeah, they're all at the club with the jester. And so by halfway through this short, I'm like, okay, I know where this is going. Yeah. And so he eventually catches up to her, and they get in a struggle. It's like, oh, this is gonna be a time loop thing.
Yeah.
And you're gonna see this chick. And she's going to be dead, and this guy's going to look out the window and see her, and it's just going to start all over again. Yeah. But what I loved about it is there's a twist, and I didn't see it coming. I was like, wow, this got me good. Where, a murder does happen, but now she's standing over the body of the guy, and now the guy who's now dead is looking at her from the apartment across the street.
So we get a nice little role reversal.
So it's a nice little role reversal.
It's 2 time loops interconnecting.
Yeah. Which I thought was like, wow, got me at the last second. What a great twist. And also visually beautiful.
Crazy looking.
Yeah. I don't really know how to feel about the whole BDSM dance scene. It's just like a weird kind of scene that's in there.
Yeah.
Doesn't take anything away. Doesn't...
Yeah, I guess
I don't really know how to feel about it.
I think maybe the only thing you could maybe say, like, okay, well, this is a club for sex workers. She's a sex worker. Mm-hmm. This person is willing to, like, kill her for whatever reason. She's lesser than. No one's going to miss her. I don't know.
Like
so
this, he's the guy with a mustache and the big eyes. Like, he looks like the classic, like, sex offender, murderer guy. Yeah. So I guess putting him in this scenario kind of like solidifies like, oh, look, he's a creeper. Yeah. He's your classic creeper. But really, he's a guy who doesn't want her to die and doesn't want to kill her, and is not trying to. He's trying to save her in a sense, but it's just this weird time loop thing. And I thought the twist at the end was great, and the animation was great, and I really liked this. It was very simple and well done. It was Emmy winning, Emmy worthy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's my number 3s. But my number 4 is Beyond the Aquita Rift.
This is one I knew that was going to be on your list,
I showed you
but
that
did not
little,
make mine. Yeah, this is the one that you pitched me on to get into the show.
Yes. I will say this one has some really awful music. There's just a song that they replay 2 or 3 times, and it's just terrible. It's really bad. But I'm actually having trouble remembering what the main plot of this one was. I just remember being kind of like blown away by the final 2 minutes.
This is him and another woman, I guess, like wake up on their ship, and a woman from his past arrives and is just like, hey, just so you know, your ship has gone hundreds of years off course. Like, you're out here in the middle of nowhere. And she's like really flirting with him a lot. And she's like, I guess if we're stuck out here, we can just kind of be together. And, you know, they have sex with each other.
Yeah, the sex scene is when when the song plays. So
and
look out for that.
The other woman who's alive is, I guess, kind of like just someone who works on his crew or whatever. And she's just like, no, something's not right here. Something is off. Like, this chick is not who she says she is. Like, don't believe her. And it's like, no, she's, you know, an ex-lover, whatever. It's fine. And then he starts to realize, like, wait, she's saying something weird, or like something's not right. It's like, you're not telling me the truth. And forces her to tell him the truth. And she's like, you're not ready for the truth. And he's like, no, I think I am. And she's like, okay.
All right.
And then it becomes this
hellscape
horror.
They were trying to get through a portal, right? Or something they were using as like but like a transportation thing. And doesn't it get stuck or get sent to another thing?
I don't exactly remember, but I think they're on their way to a distant colony or planet or whatever, and then something goes haywire and their ship goes off course. That's basically the very like, basic premise.
Because the ship is like stuck inside like a living thing, right? Or a living thing attacks them, and now it's living within this monster thing, right?
No, they're not in a living thing. I think their ship just happens to crash into a place that other ships have crashed into, and the creature that they're with isn't eating them or anything. It's not a malevolent creature. It's actually a nice thing. It's just terrifying looking.
And it makes them all believe that they are in some happy place.
Yeah, it's a creature basically going like, you're gonna die here, but I'll make the moments you're alive as pleasant as possible by putting your brain into this simulation, essentially.
Yeah. And it just has one of the coolest monster reveals.
Yeah, that thing is scary as fuck. But the way that it's introduced is real cool.
Yeah, it's like in shadow, and it's slowly, and you think it's a naked woman, but it's just the folds of where the arms, legs, and torso and everything are just part of the monster that are... it's still so much of it is in shadow, and so when it takes one step forward, it just unveils itself to be this horrifying thing.
Basically, is like this giant spider creature that looks like it's made of like human flesh with a bunch of eyes and this bunch of scary teeth and everything, but isn't actually an evil creature. Yeah. But it is terrifying looking.
And for all we know, in its species, it is really hot.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Yeah, and but then. It ends with him just going back into the dream state and starting it all over again, because I'm sure he's woken up a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But I mean, when he wakes up, he almost looks like a zombie because he hasn't gotten any nutrition or anything
he's just
like that.
Rotting away.
Yeah, I think, and his other crewmates are all dead. Like, he's the only survivor in this weird. It just looks like a bunch of these orangish spider webs.
Yeah, it's like spider webs made of flesh.
Yeah, it's gross. Cool ending, but didn't make my list.
Okay. What's your number 3?
Number 3 is from season 3, Bad Traveler. Okay, so this didn't make your list.
No.
So this is the one where it takes place on essentially a pirate ship in an alien ocean, and
is it an alien ocean, or is it just like a monstrous sea creature?
I think the synopsis said it was an alien.
Oh, okay.
Ocean.
Because I just assumed it was in our past, and it's just something that came from the deep.
No, I mean, I guess you could argue it is Earth, but it's just another version of Earth. Okay. They never say it's Earth, and it's all... Yeah, but I don't think it's saying these creatures used to exist by any means. Anyway, so this is a story of
It's a ship.
A ship, yeah.
It's a pirate ship.
They're on the open seas, and the short opens, they're getting attacked by this giant crab-like monster. And it comes in, kills a bunch of the crew, and burrows itself down below deck, and they take a vote, and they're like, hey, buddy, you're going to go down there, and you're going to try and kill this thing. And he's like, all right, cool. He's not cool about it, but he goes down, and he's able to actually speak to it, because it does the thing from Independence Day, where so there's one of the crewmates that the crab cut in half. He has this tentacle piece that kind of wraps around his throat, so he's able to speak to the humans. And he's just like, I need you to take me to this island. And he's like, okay. So he goes up and he's talking to the crew. He's like, so I talked to the creature, and it wants us to take it to this island. But if we take it to the island, it's gonna murder everyone on this island. Or we can take it to this island that's uninhabited and
try to abandon it.
And try and abandon it. It's gonna be risky. But what do you guys think? And so basically, it's him slowly killing off all of his crew members, feeding it to this creature, and you think like, this guy's just looking out for number one. The crew tries to kill him at a certain point and kills a bunch of them, and he's just like slowly feeding. And I mean, this thing is just like brutally tearing these things apart. And then you see it has babies on ships, and now there's like 100 of these like small little tiny crabs, and he's just like, man, like if this thing gets to this island, it's just gonna like birth how many of these things and kill everyone on this island. But you've just seen this guy murder his entire crew, so you're like, he's not above letting all these people die. And so it gets to the end, he's just like, hey, we're real close to the island, and he's like, but here's one thing you don't know. And he like cuts these 2 barrels that are filled with oil that I guess they've been some creatures, I guess in this version of the ocean, like seep a bunch of oil and lights the thing on fire and blows up the ship. So he's actually like the hero of the story.
Because didn't the whole crew, they wanted to go to the closer island and sacrifice the people because they'd be saved?
Yeah, and so in the story, they take a vote. And he says, 2 of you voted to take him to the island where all these people were. You 2 deserve to die, and shoots them both in the head. It's like, now we know who the traitors are, but they were all traitors.
All were traitors. And they're all like, whew, he didn't notice me.
Yeah. So this guy killed his entire crew to save the entire island and destroys the creature. And it's a story where it's with a classic anti-hero and with a cool twist at the end, and the creature is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, and it looks great. It's like realistic, but it's not realistic enough. Like, it's still...
I can believe if I saw this thing, it's not so alien that it could not possibly exist. Like, I've seen these things. I've seen crabs. I've seen octopus. These 2 just happen to have a baby together. But it's not so weird that it's not Cthulhu-esque where it would break your mind, but it's on its way.
Yeah. And honestly, if you told me that this creature existed in prehistoric times, like, there was giant crabs, I'd be like, oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
But... I just really, really enjoyed this one. It was a cool action and really great looking and good twist, and I liked everything about it.
Yeah.
And I would love to see a bigger version of this in live action too, because that monster was scary.
Yeah, I think if we were making top 5 per season, this would definitely be on my top 5 for this.
There's only 9 episodes.
Sure.
1 and 2,
okay,
2 and 3.
It's in my top 3 probably.
Yeah.
All right, so my number 3 was The Witness. So my number 2 is the last episode of season 3, Jabaro.
Oh, I'm surprised this made your list. Okay.
Really? This is not on your list?
No.
This, and some people have said this one's annoying. And I can see it because it's about a like conquistadors, and there's a siren in the lake, and it just like screams at you, and everybody goes mad and runs into the lake and drowns.
Or kills each other.
Yeah. But one of them is deaf, and so he's not affected by it. And I can see some of the like the editing and the way it like zooms in and shaking all the time. It's really frenetic. It could be like, this is kind of obnoxious, but I just thought, what a cool story, because a siren that's trying to get this dude and he's deaf, and like, okay, well, that's a fun twist. But then they like meet up and you think, oh, he's gonna fall in love with her. It's a Little Mermaid story. Nope, he just like gets her and starts ripping off all of her scales, and she looks very I'd say Indian based with a lot of the gold jewelry, and he's just yanking it off of her, and then just like lets her body float down the river, and then she comes back and screams even louder. Or wait, what does she do to cure his hearing?
This is the part I didn't quite remember. Something happens where he can hear again.
Yeah,
and then
it was like he got a cut from her. Something happened.
Well, she like dances on him for a little bit. It seems like, oh, they're gonna fall in love, and then she like kisses him, but her lips and her teeth are essentially like razor blades, so she's like cutting up his mouth, and so that's when he's like, shit, and he like knocks her off, and then that's when he steals all of her stuff.
Yeah.
This is the same guy who directed The Witness, so he's a returning director, and this one, just as visually appealing, really interesting. I like the concept of this. Seemed like the kind of thing where like maybe just happened, they didn't know what they were up against, but it seems like, oh, if they knew that this creature existed, it's like, you should have just made all your soldiers deaf, or like done something to like burn their ear sockets.
I think
or
this
something.
is like they're in a new land. They don't know what to expect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like I like the idea of a deaf knight in a group, and this is like, oh, this could have been a cool story. But once again, this is one where it's just like I liked the look of it. I liked a lot of aspects of it. But it just
you
seemed...
just want more.
No, it's not. No, I didn't want more. I liked... This is one that I think had a beginning, middle, and end, and it was all interesting. It's just I didn't know what the fuck it was trying to say. Like, was it about Mother Earth, or was it about greed? Was it's just like I didn't understand really what was happening.
Taking advantage of some...
Of other people, of colonial... like... And I know,
colonialism, let's just say that.
And I know this is the episode everyone's like, oh, Jabaro is the one that like is the biggest one from season 3. Yeah. It's the best. It's fantastic, and it's gonna win a bunch of awards. And I was like, there's a lot to like here, but it didn't make my top 5. Okay. And I know there's a lot of think pieces. I tried reading about it earlier, but the site I clicked was all praising it, but didn't say why it was really praising it. And it was like, oh, animation's beautiful and whatever. Okay.
What's your number 2 then?
My number 2 is from season 1, Good Hunting. This is the one with the father and son and their monster hunters in essentially Japan. And his father cuts the head off the demon. Or not the demon, but the spirit. The spirit or whatever it was. But the spirit had a daughter, and the daughter becomes friends with the younger son. And it's just kind of their journey together growing up. And I really like this one because, one, the animation is beautiful.
Yeah.
I like the Japanese inspiration for it, but also it was like it got into kind of like steampunk stuff.
I like seeing like the early days of steampunk.
Yeah. It had to do with definitely colonialism because white people came over and sort of changed the land, and they're like magic's leaving the because this creature that he becomes friends with is essentially a magical being, and all the magic's going from the world, and she's like has to disguise herself as a human, and then basically goes into sex work to survive, and she's abused, and then eventually like they basically take away all the parts of her body and experiment on her, and so she's like 99% robot by the end of it, and she's like, and this boy who used to be a monster hunter like now had to get a job and now works in like the steampunk world, is really good with machines, and he builds her this new body that lets her become this like avenging creature who like, so now she's this robot fox who like murders all these like awful men who are abusing the natives of this land. And I don't know, it's just beginning, middle, and end. Characters that I like and could get behind. Really interesting, beautifully animated. I liked everything about this. This is how you tell. This was a struggle. This was easily could have been my number 1. This could have been a full movie. It works perfectly well. It's a 10, 15 minute, whatever it was. I liked everything about it. No complaints.
Yeah, I before making this list, I kind of wish I would have rewatched season 1 because there is a lot of hidden gems, and like even the one with the woman who has to like cut her hand off and she's in space.
Gravity meets 127 hours. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a fun little story. There's a lot of good little ones.
I like seeing people in crazy like unsurvivable scenarios find a clever way to survive, and so it's just like, okay, I'm gonna seal off my armhole so air doesn't get out, and then just like let my arm free so I can break it off. Like, that's cool.
That is cool. Yeah. So my number 1 is probably with all
honorable mentions.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So
wait, what was your number 2?
My number 2 was Jabaro because my number 3 was your.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I like The Tall Grass because there's even a Stephen King movie on Netflix, I think, called In the Tall Grass, and there's just something about cornfields and really tall grass that is very, very scary. And yeah, it probably could use a little more fleshing out, but I really did like that one. And Snow in the Desert, which was only one of the only kind of good ones of season 2. There's that pale guy living in the...
See, this one I didn't really care for.
Really?
This is almost on the bottom.
Oh, see, I felt like it really had an interesting world with really unique characters and of like a great premise that needed more of. We were just dropped into it. We don't have the beginning. We don't have the end. And it hurts it for that. This one definitely needed to be much, much longer. But I thought it was just... It was a good kicking off point and probably my favorite thing of season 2. But it wasn't enough to like really make a list.
Agreed.
What about your honorable mentions?
So I have 4 honorable mentions here. One is Mason's Rats. I just thought,
that was fun.
Yeah, there's not a lot of these that end sort of positively, even though this was like a pretty violent one. But I liked seeing these like rats band together with like bows and arrows and spears and stuff, like fighting off these mechanical creatures that this guy bought because he's just like, there's too many rats in my goddamn barn. I need to get rid of them. And it just becomes like a slaughter fest of like seeing these rats just get like machine gunned or chopped in half or put on spikes. It's just like really crazy stuff. But I just liked, I don't know, seeing them go like, and then just like charge at this thing and like, you know, Saving Private Ryan essentially against this terrifying scorpion creature. And eventually this guy felt so bad that he's like killed generations and generations of rats that he's willing to like finally team up with them. Like, all right, man, we're cool. I don't know. I like that it ended on a positive note. I really like the animation. I thought it was just some like really dumb idea that was just a lot of fun. Yeah.
And then don't they just like brew beer or something?
I don't know if that's the whole point of them being in the barn, but he does offer the leader of the rats does offer him a drink, and he tastes it and he's like, oh my god. This is good stuff. Yeah. And so now they have like a nice relationship. So I thought that one was just a lot of fun.
Okay.
I liked Beyond the Aquila Rift. I liked because the creature was scary as shit. And Pop Squad, which was the one where there's kind of like a detective character and he has to kill children.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought that like this is one that could be a movie too.
Yeah.
Like I like
it got like Blade Runner feels.
Blade Runner if all the robots were human children. Just because like imagine the job of murdering children who are all pure innocent, whose only crime is being born, essentially. You know, really late stage abortionist.
Yeah. This is the future liberals won.
And just kind of like, I don't know, just a really beautiful story of just like, I have this job that I'm required to do for human population control, and it's important, but it's like, you know, taking a toll on them. It's like, why do I really need to do this? And I don't know, it just really beautiful but dark story, and I just thought it was really cool, and I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah. Did you ever see Whatever Happened to Monday with Noomi Rapace?
Yeah.
It's like Blade Runner and meets Whatever Happened to Monday.
Right. And my last honorable mention is kind of a two-parter. It's the only two-parter in the series. It's 3 robots.
Oh yeah.
Or not necessarily a two-parter, but they
get 2 episodes.
They come back. Yeah.
The only recurring characters.
It's one of the few that is just lighthearted and fun and sweet, and I like all the robots and how they like play off each other and how they have vastly different looks. And you know, in the second one, then they kind of tell the story of how humanity fell, and it's just like all very topical to the day. And just like, yep, this tracks. This all makes sense. And especially in the second one where you see like, this is where the poor people died, this is where the rich people died, and this is where the really rich people went. And then you find out they all went to space, and then they're all cats or something like that, which was kind of stupid. Played by Chris Parnell as
but there was a cat in the first one too.
There was a cat in the first one, yeah. But yeah, I just really liked how cute they were and like how much knowledge they had, but how stupid they were. Like they didn't know what a bunch of stuff was.
Yeah.
And one of the robots, his original, where he was Xbot 3000, but the Xbot 1 was just like a gaming system. Okay. So it was like how he progressed to just be a full cyborg or whatever it was. I don't know. I just really thought it was cute and fun. It was. I wish there was less bleak futuristic stuff and more. I mean, obviously it was bleak because all of humanity's gone. Yeah. But at least this was like fun and lighthearted.
It was. Yeah.
And the jokes worked. I did laugh watching these.
Yeah. All right. So my number 1 favorite came from season 3. It's Night of the Mini Dead.
Oh, okay. We didn't match up as much as I thought we were.
Yeah, we really only had
just the one, yeah.
This one doesn't have a story, doesn't really have characters. It's just a zombie apocalypse told from an aerial view, sped up. So you just have some people jogging in a park, and you just have some zombies come in, and they eat them real quick, and then they get up and join the herd. And it just shows how this outbreak spreads and spreads and grows, and we just get from the very beginning to the end of a zombie apocalypse, and even like big crazy mutant zombies. And it's short and sweet and funny and gory. It just has all these little things, and there's like no dialogue. It's just a bunch of like little quick speak, kind of like Chip and Dale. I don't know. I loved it. It had a really great look, that tilt shift lens where big things look like miniatures. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely fun look and enjoyable little short. I think it's only like 6 minutes too. Like it's
one of the
shorter ones.
Yeah.
And it's one where it's like you got enough story. It's to where it's like, okay, I get what you're trying to say. It actually, the look of it, I would say, reminds me of all those like mobile game commercials that you see, like, that's what it looked like. And that's the only thing I was just like, man, I don't know. That was fun, but I need something with a little bit more meat to it. But I know you're a big fan of zombies and all that kind of stuff. But it was fun seeing that all take place very quickly and spread to its ridiculousness so fast. But my number one is one that I'm pretty sure is very popular with the Love, Death, and Robots fans, but is also one that I think most people wouldn't say is their favorite because it's not it's not about, being violent or anything like that or shocking or whatever. But my favorite one is Zima Blue.
Really?
Yeah.
I know this was a really, real popular one, but this one really didn't affect me at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked it. It tells a complete story. It's interesting. The animation's very visually appealing.
I think it's one of the uglier ones.
No, I understand that. It's not for... It has... do you know that show Total Drama Island?
Yeah.
It kind of has that same sort of like facial structure on there.
And the real sharp chin and...
Or like a real rounded face with a pointy nose or something, whatever it is. Yeah, but I don't know. I liked the concept of this super rich guy who's making these ridiculous paintings with blue shapes, and it seemed like something that could have been like, oh, is this going to be one of those artsy things? And I mean, in a sense it is, but the fact that you meet this man and it's like, oh, got all these cybernetic enhancements and he's been alive for over 100 years and he, he's revealing his final piece and like, oh, what does this small pool have anything to do? And you find out that he started out as a pool cleaning robot, and he was never human. It's just like every time he got sent to a new owner, they would add on a new thing, and he would gain more knowledge, and eventually became like his own sort of sentient being. And he was the first like real AI, and he is like, I've accomplished everything I want to accomplish. I've lived a total life. I just want to go back to being back to my pure self. And his final art piece was him jumping back into his pool and becoming his original pool cleaning robot. And I don't know. I thought it was beautiful and well animated and interesting. And I didn't see that twist coming. And I don't know. I know it's not the most, I wouldn't say it's the most visual appealing or the most interesting story or the most, extreme in any of the sense. It's just, I think
it's not filled with nudity and blood.
Yeah. It's just something that was done so well all around that I don't know, just something about it spoke to me. I just really, really liked it. I think other stuff I could see being bigger movies where I wouldn't necessarily want to see a full movie of this.
No.
Per se, but I think as a short film, it's as good as a short film as you can do. Like this is something that, not that it would be on a Disney film, but is one of those short film-esque things where it's not offensive in any way. It's just a very interesting, well-told story in a 10-15 minute format or whatever. And I really, really liked it.
Do you think would any of these be able to contend at the Oscars for like animated short? Do you think? Or is there a release criteria that would force you to do that?
I don't. It's interesting because I guess technically this is a TV show, so it would never be eligible for Oscars, even though they're all their own separate things.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, here's an animated short. It's a movie. Well, it's 15 minutes. Is it really a movie? It's an episode of a series that only has one episode.
Yeah, I don't know the qualifications of that. And I know like Netflix has theaters so they can release like live action stuff into Oscar contention. It surprised me that at least I don't think there's ever been like a Netflix short that's been nominated for stuff. I could do some research on that. But definitely. I think a lot of these have Oscar potential, but I don't know if they're just not qualified because they're a TV show.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm very surprised. I'm glad we didn't have like some of your favorites were my worst or vice versa.
Yeah.
And we only really had the one in our top five. So
shout out to The Witness.
Yeah. So I guess that's the true winner that we both agree that's one of the best ones. So The Witness is technically the best.
Yeah. But I think a lot of mine are just below your bottom 5, and a lot of yours are just below mine. If we had a top 10, they'd all be on there.
And if we ranked them, every single one of them, I can see they'd be similar lists.
Sure.
Because there are ones like the crazy robot bear in season 3. Yeah. There's like not much to it besides blood and guts and guns, but it's really fun.
Dumb jokes, yeah. But
Joel McHale and
yeah. I heard his voice and I was like, that voice sounds so familiar. Yeah. And then he did some sort of like cocky kind of line. I was like, oh, that's Joel McHale.
Yeah. There's a lot more known actors in this season. And like, because I had watched this right after Station 11, and the woman that does the voice in The Very Pulse of the Machine, she's the lead in that. I'm like, oh, this lady just keeps popping up in my stuff. But looking at all these, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this person and this person and this person.
Is there any other ones you want to mention? Because there is one more that it wasn't good enough to make my... It was just kind of middle of the road for me, but there's stuff in it I want to talk about.
I think if you didn't bring it up, would probably have been the werewolf one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's probably like pretty up there.
All right. So there's one in this new season. I forget the title, and I'm not going to look it up. But it has Joe Manganiello and Jai Courtney and Christian Serratos from Walking Dead, where they're like soldiers, and they go into this cave, and they find Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah.
But I just want to say, once again, it's one of those ones where it's so realistic looking. It's just like, you could have just hired live action people for this. Who cares? Yeah. But I wanted to ask your opinion on what you thought of like the Cthulhu creature, or that story in general. But I really wanted to talk about one. I don't know if I've said it before, but I really hate like spiders with human faces. So seeing those like spider creatures in the beginning and just like their little face pop out with all the teeth is not something I really enjoy. And the fact that they just all like eat a human being in like 12 seconds is horrifying. But then you saw some other sort of spider-like spike creature that is just like like they all just kind of jump on Jai Courtney's character and just like stab him, like going through his eyeball, like into his like there's some really fucking brutal deaths in it. It's just like, Jesus Christ, this is like some of the scarier stuff. Like I can't even imagine like seeing it. And then you had that guy who like kind of survived, but he's just like basically a pound of flesh who's just like hanging on for dear life. It's a really, really gross episode.
This season 3 was a lot more violent than maybe 1 and 2 together. It just seemed like there was extreme violence in almost all of them.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if I was going to bring up another one, I really like in season 3, I think it was called The Hive. And like we had found this thing in space, and we have this symbiotic relationship with it. We could eat its food and breathe its air. And then, of course, someone's like, well, can we use this for war applications? And it's like, oh no, I see what you're all about. You're not going to use me. You're in me. I'm going to turn the tables on you. I really enjoyed that, and that did feel like I can see that being a bigger movie.
Yeah, I for most of that I was just like, okay, this is fine. Like some of the space shrimp or whatever, interesting looking, and but that like final kind of sequence with her like connected to like the hive brain and stuff, and just like there's like a wide shot that's like just really, really cool looking and just horrifying at how she's like strapped in there, and there's aspects of that I really, really liked, but it was just kind of middle of the road for me. But I agree, it's definitely one that's like, oh, that's the finale of a bigger movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're both looking forward to season 4. If we get a season 4,
I'd watch more.
We'll see if Netflix is still around in another year. They seem to be having some hardships with their
they'll be around
business model, or someone will buy it and they'll still be called Netflix, but I don't know.
I think you could say that they're having troubles, but I think they're still doing really, really well.
I don't know how they're functioning though. They're like, everything they do is millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they're releasing it every single week. You get Warner Brothers and they go, we have a movie a month and we do 12 movies a year. Some hit, some don't. And Netflix is just every single week.
Well, I mean, they canceled a bunch of their stuff, and
you still had to pay for that to get it started. And you cancel it and you save it and you put that money into something else. But it just seems like, and they're changing their subscription models, and some with ads, some that you could only have it on 2 devices, some you could have it on 5, which I get. I'm surprised there aren't more services that offer the lots of commercials, one commercial, no commercials, and then you have lots of commercials on one device, on 10 devices. Like you piece it out. Oh, I pay $1 extra for every device it's on, something like that. I'm surprised more services don't do that.
Sure. I mean, I think I saw an article where they want to make bigger movies but make a lot less of them.
Okay.
So if their plan is to, and I'm not here to defend Netflix. Like, I don't give a shit about Netflix.
How much stock do you have in Netflix, Steve?
I'm just saying, like, I think if their new goal is to go, okay, we'll make quality over quantity, it's like, yeah, we're gonna lose a bunch of subscribers now, but like we're kind of we were the streaming service for years and years until everyone kind of caught up and started making like quality content. Or like if Netflix isn't putting out as much shit as they used to be, but if they start making like good shit and must-see TV, like if they make a bunch of shows that are Stranger Things level of entertainment, they're gonna be just fine. They just need to make sure they have.
You don't release 4 things the same week of your Stranger Things. You release your Stranger Things, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And I can see they're definitely going to go to starting to split seasons in either half or in thirds and release it, because it's like, oh, you like Stranger Things? We're going to split it into 3 parts over 4 months. So you have to pay for it for 4 months in order to watch all this.
Probably, yeah.
Whereas before, we drop it all, you pay for it the 1 month, and then you're done.
Yep.
I'm guaranteeing that's how their new model is going to be.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
And I get it.
I don't pay for Netflix anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
We're password sharing motherfuckers on this podcast.
I pay for some, I don't pay for others. It's you give a little, you get a little.
Yeah.
So let's see. Next week, what do we got next week?
We are watching Jurassic World Dominion.
Cool. Fallen Kingdom was the last one.
Fallen Kingdom was okay, yeah. Are you excited for this one, bud? Do you think it looks better or worse than the second one?
Oh, definitely looks better than the last one was stupid. The last one was 2 movies that didn't have an ending, or 2 movies that weren't complete movies that they just had to squish together.
Sure, but that's after you watch it. Did you watch the trailer for the second one? You're like, oh, wow, that looks cool.
Yes, I did.
Because I could see this one being, oh, that looks cool, and then you watch it and like, oh, here's another 2 movies.
And you know what's going to be? It's the
A story of Chris Pratt doing that thing, and then the B story of Jonathan Grant doing
Alan Grant.
Sorry.
Yeah, Alan Grant, Malcolm, and Ellie Sadler. They're doing their thing, and of course they come at the end. I couldn't remember. I know his name. Isn't it Owen?
Chris Pratt's character?
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it's Owen. Because I've heard him being called Duke Thunderguns and a bunch of other things. It's like it was a Red Letter Media. They couldn't remember the name, so they called him Duke Thunderguns, and then Bryce Dallas Howard was Lady, and because that's generally kind of what in these movies are. It's like you have a bunch of dudes and then the woman,
and the kid.
Yep, and the old person. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited. This is what, as a kid, after seeing Jurassic Park and then like getting teased in Jurassic Park: The Lost World of dinosaurs in our world right now.
Just watch We're Back.
I tried. I put it on and I was a little tired, but it was like, okay.
Recently?
In the last 6 months.
Okay.
And it was just like, oh, yeah, this isn't very good.
Yeah,
I didn't grow up with We're Back.
Yeah, I remember watching a lot when I was a kid, but if you asked me to like tell you what that movie was about, it's like, I know there's cartoon dinosaurs in New York. Yep. I don't know anything else about it.
And they're like stomping down the street on the poster. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm excited. And I did put this down as this will be my highest grossing film of the year.
I don't think that's anywhere. I don't think it's going to beat Doctor Strange. I don't think Doctor Strange is
I said after all Marvel movies. Not all Disney movies, but the 3 Marvel movies that are going to be released this year are going to be the 3 highest grossing films.
Enough.
So after all your Marvel movies are off, Jurassic World Dominion will be the highest grossing. I don't know if that's going to be the case because Lightyear comes out the week after, and that's going to take a big chunk. I mean, Dinosaurs and Toy Story sequel, kids are going to love that. But I am excited because I do love dinosaurs. I grew up just loving dinosaurs. So I'm excited, but I have very low hopes because just because you add legacy characters doesn't mean it's going to be good. And no one's going to die. Maybe the black woman who's in it, she's the new character, but it's like she's the most disposable because
you're not going to kill off Duke Thunderguns, you're not going to kill off Lady, and you're not going to kill off your legacy characters. So, I mean, maybe Ian Malcolm. Maybe. I guess of the three, he's the most sacrificial.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's going to die. It's just going to be all, like, background characters who are just like, oh, and you can't do this thing. It's like, well, I got to otherwise. And it's like, no, I'm going to tell you right now that you're not going to. And then,
yeah. So BD Wong will die because he's become the villain.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he'll die. Isn't it weird that Vincent D'Onofrio was in the first Jurassic World?
Totally forgot.
Yeah. He was smart, you know. Yeah. He didn't have to.
I mean, I enjoyed Jurassic World,
yeah,
but it was just like, okay, you just did the first movie but bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, the second one I didn't care about. This one I don't care about. I don't think it'll be good. And, you know, bringing back, like you said, you know, bring in legacy characters to, you know, bring in the old people. But I think it's just like, you bring in legacy characters because your movie's dog shit and you need to make it interesting. Or like have the idea like, oh, well, the legacy characters wouldn't have come back if it's not good. It was like, no, they came back because you offered them a bunch of money.
And that's just what you do in franchises now, is just pull whatever you can from the original stuff.
I hope this is the last Jurassic.
I think they said it is.
Well, I'm sure it's the last one in this trilogy. It's just I don't want like 4 years to go by. And like, guess what? New Jurassic Park movie coming, but this time it's set in the future.
Yeah, Jurassic Park in space. Jurassic Park in space.
Jurassic Park and the T-Rex is teamed up with Dominic Toretto.
Okay.
Jurassic parking lot.
Oh, bad.
Too fast, too Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah, and it would be spelled like Tyrannosaurus.
Tyrannosaurus, yeah.
Oh, God. I'll be okay if this is the last of them. And if they do come back, I want them to do what they were planning to do with the original trilogy is, of course, you use it, dinosaurs for weapons in war. But it's like dino-human hybrids. And I know they went, this is too weird for a Jurassic Park sequel. We're not doing that. Okay, now we got 6 in the bag. You could start doing dino-human hybrids. That's the only way I will want to come back to this series.
I want to see a world where it's now, like, you know what? I was kind of joking about Jurassic Park, but in the future. But you don't make Jurassic, you said in the future, but it's not about the theme park anymore. We have figured out a way to sort of coexist with dinosaurs in a sense, like, you know, maybe we build walled cities because you can't really go out into the woods because there's T-Rex out there. And there's no, I mean, we'd have to, like, really kind of monitor that kind of thing. But it's just like, you know what if there's, like, instead of dog races, raptor races?
Sure.
You know, you breed race raptors and you declaw them or whatever, and, you know, you just race them. And it's like, now there's better, or like maybe you do like Flintstones things. There's Brontosaurus is lifting boulders with their heads or something.
Like you're walking down the street and like there's certain alarms that go off that go like pterodactyls in the area, and everybody knows to go to safety because pterodactyls are just picking people up in the middle of the road. You know?
You live in a big city, and instead of like rats being the big problem, it's those little like
the compies,
the little compies, from the second one, you know, or the third one,
second one,
whatever. Who cares?
Kill. Fuck. Hold on. I get it. Satan and Constantine.
Satan and Constantine.
Yeah, Satan, the guy who plays Satan in Constantine.
Peter
Stormare.
Peter Stormare, yeah.
The compies kill Peter Stormare when he goes to take a piss, and then they attack him.
See, I was thinking about the guys in the boat at the beginning of the third one, because it
was the little girl.
The little girl, yeah.
That was the second one.
That was the second one?
Yeah.
No. Whatever. Yeah, and you just have like a world with dinosaurs, and maybe you're taking some liberties in terms of like, well, if this was happening and they couldn't, it's like, yeah, sure, who cares? Right? We're just spitballing here, but like a world with like dinosaurs that have now coexisted, or maybe it just leads into what you're saying with human dinosaur hybrids, and that's how you get to the TV show Dinosaurs from the early 90s.
Yeah, that wasn't the actual past, but that's the future.
Yeah. Or, you know, dinosaurs wiped out a bunch of humanity, but it's kind of gone in humanity's regress, and now it's just the Flintstones. You know, you could do a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, I don't want any of that.
It's all terrible, yeah.
All right, so next week, Jurassic World Dominion. Are you going to rewatch any of the other ones?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, because it's like the only one you need to rewatch is probably the last one, and I ain't doing that.
Yeah, I remember the first one enough, and the last one I refuse to watch again.
Yeah, it's bad. So if you'd like to get in contact with us, we are at WRPL Podcast on Gmail, Twitter, Instagram. Hit us up with any of your questions, comments, concerns, complaints. We'll take it all. And as always, I'm Ben.
And I'm Steve.
Bye.